I learned the hard way that the most terrifying sound in a blizzard isn't the wind, it's the quiet click you hear when your rideshare driver turns on, the child locks, and you realize the door handle is suddenly decorative. It was the first weekend after New Year's. Snow was coming down sideways, thick enough to blur street signs, and the wind made every streetlight glow like it was trapped inside fog. I'd stayed late at a small office downtown, and by the time I stepped outside, the sidewalks were slick, the buses were delayed, and my boots were already soaking through. I stood under an awning, with my phone out, watching the app's little car icon crawl toward me. I told myself to do everything right, check the plate, check the name, sit in the back, keep the route on my screen. But the cold makes your brain simplify, and all I could think was warm car, warm air, get home. A dark sedan rolled up with its hazards blinking. The driver leaned across the passenger seat and said my first name like he already owned it. I checked the plate, and it matched. I checked the photo, and it looked close enough in the snow and darkness. I got in the back seat and immediately felt heat wash over my face. The windows were fogged at the edges. The wipers scraped slush in a steady rhythm. The driver didn't play music. He just drove quiet and careful, and for the first 2 minutes my fear tried to settle back into normal. Then he took a turn that didn't match the route. The app redrew the line, and he said, "Casual shortcut. Main roads closed." The shortcut pulled us behind warehouses near the river, where the streetlights thinned out, and the snow sounded louder, like it had room to breathe. I watched the map dot slide away from the main grid. My phone kept flickering between one bar of service and none. I texted my friend Jenna anyway. In a ride. Detour. Stay up. The message sat on, sending frozen like the air outside. The car slowed, not because of traffic, but because the road narrowed into an unplowed side street. He stopped at a buried stop sign, rolled forward, and stopped again. The engine idled. The heater kept blowing like nothing was wrong. I reached for the door handle without thinking, just to reassure myself. I pulled. The handle moved. The door didn't. I pulled again harder. Nothing. My stomach dropped as my brain finally caught up to what my hand already knew. I tried the other handle. I tried the lock tab. I tried to keep my voice level. "Hey, my door won't open," I said. "Can you turn off the child lock?" He didn't answer right away. He stared at the empty street ahead, as if he was listening to the storm. Then he smiled in the rearview mirror, small and contained. "Why would you need it open?" he asked. My mouth went dry. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to be polite, because politeness is what you reach for when you're trapped. "I get anxious," I said carefully. "I just like knowing I can open it if I need air." He chuckled softly. "You're fine," he said. "It's freezing out there. You don't want to step into that." He wasn't wrong, and that was the sickest part. The blizzard outside made the car feel like the only shelter, even while he controlled it. My phone flashed a low battery warning. The cold had eaten it down to single digits. I opened the app safety menu, hands shaking, and tried to share the trip link. No service. I tried again. Still nothing. I tried to screenshot the map, anything that would survive if my phone died. The screen lagged, then dimmed like it was giving up. I held it near the window, hunting for one bar of signal, and only found my own reflection staring back. I leaned forward and finally saw it. The child lock indicator, a tiny symbol on the doorframe that meant the car had been set to keep someone from leaving. It turned my fear into certainty. I forced myself to memorize details. The chipped nail on his thumb, the sweet air freshener trying to bury something older, the way he kept his shoulders relaxed like he had all the time in the world. I tapped the in-app emergency option anyway. The screen spun, once failed, and returned to the map quiet and useless. That's when I understood no one was coming fast enough to matter, so I needed to reach a place where witnesses were unavoidable. The driver's eyes flicked down to the glow of my screen. "Who you texting?" he asked. His voice wasn't casual anymore. It was checking. "Battery," I lied. I dimmed the screen and forced my breathing to slow. I needed him to keep thinking I was manageable. He put the car back in drive and rolled deeper into the side street, then stopped again. "We'll wait," he said, like he was doing me a favor. "Roads will clear." I realized the trap had two walls. the locked door and the storm. If I got out and ran, I'd be running blind in wind and whiteout between empty buildings. If I stayed, I was sitting behind glass with a stranger who had already decided my comfort didn't matter. I needed a reason that made him stop somewhere public, something he cared about. My voice came out shaky on purpose. "I'm going to throw up," I said. I pressed my hand to my mouth and made a small gagging sound, ugly and convincing. He swore under his breath. "Don't do that in my car," he snapped, and annoyance finally pushed him into action. He turned hard tires, crunching, and drove toward the nearest strip of lights. After a few minutes, a convenience store appeared through the snow, bright fluorescent squares against the dark. One Pump Island. A plowed patch of lot, cameras under the awning. He pulled up to the curb near the entrance instead of the pump, and kept the engine running. "Be quick," he said. He still hadn't turned the music on. He still didn't look back. I pulled the handle again. Still locked. I looked at the mirror and met his eyes. "Turn it off," I said, and I didn't bother hiding the fear anymore. There was that same quiet click, and the door finally opened. The wind punched me in the face, so hard it stole my breath. Snow hit my eyelashes. I ran straight for the glass doors and the bright interior. I nearly slipped on the wet floor inside. The clerk looked up, startled. "Call the police," I said, and my voice sounded wrong, like it belonged to someone else. My driver locked me in. Through the window I saw the sedan idling at the curb. For one long second it didn't move, like he was deciding whether to come in after me. Then the car rolled away, tail lights dissolving into white. When the police arrived, they asked if he threatened me, if he touched me, if I was sure about the locks. I told them the truth. He didn't need threats. The locks did it for him. The blizzard did the rest. Later, warm and shaking in my apartment, I opened the app and saw the ride marked completed. It asked if I felt safe. It showed a detour, but nothing that screamed danger to an algorithm. I reported it anyway. I got a polite email about an investigation. Nothing else. I still remember the click. Every winter night since, when I get into a car and hear a lock engage, my stomach drops, like I'm back on that empty side street with the engine idling and the storm pressing against the windows, and I understand the worst part wasn't being trapped. The worst part was how the cold outside tried to convince me I should stay. Even weeks later, I could swear I still heard that click. In quiet rooms, a reminder that a door is only a door when someone lets it be. The blizzard made me reckless, and the most terrifying rideshare experience I had began with me climbing into a car that wasn't my ride because the cold made me hurry. It was late at night in early January, and snow was falling in thick sheets that erased the lines between sidewalk and street. My lashes kept icing over, and every breath tasted like cold metal. I left a crowded bar early because the storm was getting worse, and I didn't want to be out when the city finally shut down. Outside, everything was white and loud. Wind shoved snow into my face. Cars crept past like ghosts, with their hazard lights blinking. I requested a rideshare and watched the app spin, searching for a driver. It finally matched me with someone and gave me the usual details: make, model, color, license plate, a name, a little photo that looked friendly enough. The driver icon on the map was close. My phone screen was already dimming from the cold, and my battery was sliding down faster than it should. I pulled my hood tighter and stood under a building's awning, staring at my screen like it was a lifeline. A car rolled up along the curb, same color, same general shape, and the window lowered just enough for a man to call out, "You waiting on a ride?" His voice sounded normal, tired, like everyone else in winter. I stepped closer and tried to read the plate, but it was smeared with slush and half covered in snow. "What's the name?" I asked, and he answered with the exact name on my screen. That should have been enough. In the moment it was. I opened the back door and slid in, grateful for the wall of warm air that hit my face. The cabin was warm, but the air smelled sharp like cologne, trying too hard. He pulled away immediately, and the locks clicked, a clean sound that made my stomach tighten. I looked down at my phone to confirm the trip had started, and my blood went cold. The app still said, "Finding your driver." My matched driver was still 2 minutes away on the map, moving toward my pickup point that I had already left. For a second I thought the app was glitching. Storms mess with signal. GPS jumps. I stared harder, waiting for it to update. It didn't. The car icon on my phone wasn't me. It was someone else. My real driver was still coming to the curb I'd abandoned. I lifted my eyes and looked at the driver's reflection in the rearview mirror. He wasn't looking at the road the way someone drives carefully in snow. He kept glancing at me, measuring whether I'd noticed. When our eyes met, he smiled, like we shared a secret. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice steady. "My app still says it's looking. What's your plate number?" He waved one hand dismissively. "App's acting up," he said. "Storm. Happens. Just cancel on your end so you don't get charged twice. I'll still take you." Cancel. The word landed like a trap. If I cancelled, my real driver would disappear from the system and I'd have no record of the car I was in. My phone buzzed with a calendar event I hadn't created. That's not my car. 1116 p.m. Location. The warm seat is the bait. The only button was accept. I swiped it away and it returned, stubborn as panic. An unknown number texted immediately, "Do not cancel." Another message followed, "Get a plate. Get a face. Get out in light." My hand drifted toward the door handle. I pulled lightly. The door didn't open. I tried again, harder. Nothing. The handle moved. The door stayed shut. Child locks, I thought, and my throat went dry. The storm outside suddenly felt less like danger and more like the only honest thing in the situation. I forced myself to breathe slowly. "My friend is tracking this trip," I lied. "It updates automatically. I just need to make sure the app is right." I angled my phone like I was sharing the screen, but really I was opening my camera as quietly as I could. The driver chuckled. "Tracking," he said. "You kids and your paranoia." He turned onto a side street I didn't recognize, away from the main road where the few open businesses still glowed through the snow. The tires crunched, the car fishtailed slightly, and he didn't seem bothered. "Can you take the next right back to Maine?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "My building is right there." He didn't answer. He turned the heater higher, as if warmth could buy silence. The windows fogged more, closing the world out. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo of the rearview mirror reflection catching part of his face. The shutter sound was muted, but not silent. His eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing?" he asked, and his voice sharpened. "Accident," I said quickly. "My phone." He reached his arm back, not fully, but enough to make the threat clear. "Don't take pictures," he said. "It's illegal." He said it with confidence, like he practiced the line. My heart hammered. Snow battered the windows. The road was empty. I could feel the isolation pressing in from every direction, trapped in a moving box with a stranger, and trapped in a storm that punished anyone who tried to run. I needed him to stop. I needed witnesses. I looked for light, and saw it ahead through the snow. A fast food place, with a drive-through sign still on the golden glow of a 24-hour window. I pointed. "I'm going to be sick," I said, letting my voice wobble. "Please pull in." "I'm not kidding." He cursed, softly. "Don't do that," he snapped, and he turned into the lot annoyed, as if I'd inconvenienced him more than he'd terrified me. He pulled into a spot near the entrance, but not close enough for me to sprint inside, without crossing open snow. He kept the engine running. "Hurry," he said. I yanked the door handle again. Still locked. I looked at him. "Unlock it," I said, and I didn't bother pretending anymore. Now, his jaw tightened. For a second he just stared forward, deciding. Then the locks clicked, and the door finally opened. The wind hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. I threw myself out, boots slipping on ice, and ran toward the bright entrance. Behind me I heard the car rev, like he might leave before I could get inside. I didn't look back. I slammed through the doors and shouted loud enough for the whole place to hear, "Call the police." I got in the wrong rideshare. He locked me in. People turned. A teenager behind the counter froze with a bag in his hand. An older man near the soda machine looked up, eyes sharp. The clerk reached for the phone. Through the window, the car peeled out of the lot, tail lights streaking red through white. My hands shook as I opened the app and watched my real driver reach my original pickup point, circle once, then cancel. The app asked if I wanted another ride. I reported what happened, but without a plate number, it felt pointless. Later, when police took my statement, they asked the questions they always ask. Did he touch you? Did he threaten you? Did you get a plate? I said no, not directly, not out loud. I said the locks were the threat. I said the storm was the cover. I showed them the blurry mirror photo, half his face, half fog. That night, back in my apartment, I kept replaying the curbside moment when I couldn't read the plate because it was buried in snow. I realized how easy it is on a night like that for someone to cruise pickup zones and offer warmth like a gift. The blizzard didn't just make me cold, it made me hurry, and hurrying is how you climb into the wrong car while your real ride is still on its way. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had in a blizzard wasn't the moment I realized my driver was off route. It was the moment I realized he was doing it on purpose, and the storm outside made every escape option feel like a bad joke. It happened on a night when the weather alerts wouldn't stop buzzing, the kind of storm that turns highways into white tunnels and makes trees creak like they're warning you. I'd been at a friend's place on the edge of town, and I waited until the last possible minute to leave because the wind sounded violent, even through the walls. By the time I stepped outside, snow was up to my ankles, and the street was covered in tracks that filled in as fast as they were made. I requested a ride anyway because I didn't have a car, and walking home would have been slow suicide. The app matched me with an SUV that looked sturdy enough for winter roads, and the driver's profile had a decent rating and a photo that looked normal. When the vehicle pulled up, the headlights were hazy through falling snow, and the driver rolled down the window just enough to confirm my name. I checked the plate. It matched. I got in the back seat, buckled up, and watched the map like it was a prayer. At first, he drove steady hands, firm on the wheel wipers fighting the snow. The heater was on low, just enough to keep the windshield clear. The cabin smelled like wet fabric and peppermint gum. I kept telling myself it was fine, it was just a ride, it was just winter. Then we hit the main road, and the GPS voice said, "Continue straight," but he turned left. The app redrew the route. He didn't explain. I waited a beat, then asked casually, "Is the highway closed?" He didn't look back. "Shortcut," he said. "Everyone's stuck." I know the back way. Back way in a blizzard is never a comforting phrase. My phone showed us leaving the lit roads and heading toward darker blocks where streetlights were sparse and snow swallowed the lines. I tried to keep my voice calm. "My building is near the main road," I said. "I don't mind traffic." He shrugged. "Trust me," he replied, and something about the way he said it felt less like reassurance and more like a command. The SUV turned again, then again, and soon we were leaving neighborhoods entirely. The houses thinned out. Fences disappeared. Trees started to crowd the roadside, their branches heavy with ice. The wind shook them, and snow fell in small avalanches, like the forest was shedding weight. My stomach tightened. I opened the app's safety menu and tried to share my trip with my sister. The message hung on sending, then failed. One bar of signal flickered and vanished. The farther we went, the quieter the world became, not because the storm stopped, but because there were fewer human noises to compete with it. No traffic, no distant sirens, just the wipers and the wind. I watched the driver's face in the rearview mirror, and every so often his eyes flicked to mine quick and checking, like he was monitoring my awareness. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, trying to keep the question light. He finally spoke, with a little laugh. "Home," he said. "Relax." I didn't relax. I reached for the door handle, not pulling it hard, just testing. It opened diffraction and stopped locked. Child locks. My throat went dry. I didn't want to say the words because naming it made it real. I tried again, and the door didn't move. The driver's shoulders stayed loose. He had the calm body language of someone who knows you can't do anything about it. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full-screen HE drove into the forest during the storm 1038p. M. Location, where the signal dies. The only button was accept pulsing. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. He's leaving the grid. Another message followed. Don't say forest. Say, turn around. My hands shook. I forced my voice steady. Turn around, I said. This isn't the route. He didn't answer. The SUV kept moving, tires crunching over packed snow. We passed a sign half buried by drifted snow that I could barely read, but the part I caught made my stomach drop. County road. No houses, no businesses, no cameras. The trees leaned in like the road was a tunnel. Lightning flashed somewhere far away inside the clouds, turning the forest white for a split second, and then everything went dark again. I tried the in-app emergency call. The screen spun, then failed. No service. I tried calling 911 anyway, because sometimes calls go through even when texts don't. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Then a whisper. Happy New Year. The call dropped. My blood went cold. The same phrase again, like a signature stamped on my fear. The unknown number texted immediately. He does that when you feel alone. Another message: you need a stop, not an argument. I stared at the driver's headrest, trying to think like someone who survives. In movies you fight, you scream, you jump out. In reality, the storm outside looked lethal. If I bailed into deep snow in the middle of nowhere, I could disappear and no one would find me until spring. He didn't need a weapon if the weather was his weapon. I needed him to stop the car somewhere visible, somewhere he couldn't control every variable. I scanned the road ahead and saw nothing but trees and blowing snow. Then the SUV slowed, and for a sick second I thought he was stopping because he was done. But he stopped, because there was a fallen branch across the road, thick and iced, blocking the path. He sighed, like it was an inconvenience. "Stay," he said, and he opened his door, stepping out into the storm without hesitation. The wind whipped snow into the open cabin. Cold punched my face. For a second he was outside, and the locks were still on, and my brain screamed, "This is the moment." I shoved my fingers into the front passenger door handle from the back, stretching, twisting my body, trying the latch. Locked. I reached for the lock button on the passenger door panel and hit it. Nothing. Child locks meant my back door was useless, but the front passenger door should have been able to open if it wasn't locked. It didn't. He'd locked everything. My heart hammered. I looked for another option and saw it. The driver's seat was empty, keys in the ignition, the gear shift visible. If I could get into the front, I could drive. I crawled over the center console, awkward and shaking, and reached for the driver's door handle from inside. It opened. Cold air roared in. I didn't think I had just moved. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and my hands found the gear shift and the pedals like instinct. My foot hit the brake. The car lurched. The driver turned eyes wide in the storm and sprinted back, snow spraying under his boots. He grabbed the handle as I shifted into reverse. The SUV jerked, backward tires spinning. He shouted something I couldn't hear over wind. I slammed the accelerator harder, and the SUV fishtailed, almost sliding into a snowbank, but it moved. His grip slipped off the door handle, and for a split second his face was right outside the window, angry, shocked, not calm anymore. I reversed far enough to clear him, then slammed into drive and gunned it hard in my throat, praying the road back was real. The SUV skidded, corrected, skidded again. I could barely see. Trees blurred past. The storm swallowed everything except the narrow strip the headlights carved out. I drove until my hands cramped and my lungs hurt, and finally the trees thinned and a faint glow appeared ahead. Houses, then a gas station sign like a lighthouse in whiteout. I pulled into the lot, jumped out, and ran inside, half screaming, half laughing from shock. The clerk stared at me. I said, "Call the police." My driver tried to take me into the woods. Minutes later, when officers arrived, I couldn't even explain the weirdest part he'd gotten out of the car in the storm. Like he wasn't afraid of it. Like the cold was his ally. They asked if I had his name, his plate proof. I had the trip record, but it ended the moment I took the car and the app flagged it as suspicious on me, not him. By the next day, the driver profile was gone, replaced by a message saying my account was under review for unsafe behavior. I stared at that sentence like it was another lock clicking into place. The blizzard had been his cover, and the system had become his alibi. And I couldn't shake the thought that if the branch hadn't fallen across the road, he would have kept driving until there was no way back. The scariest rideshare experience I had during the blizzard wasn't when the car broke down. It was when my driver decided we should wait on the highway shoulder and started talking like the storm had given him permission to own the situation. It was a Sunday night, the kind of night where the city feels half closed and then a winter warning hits and everything becomes tense. Snow was blowing so hard, it looked like the world was being erased. I requested a ride from a grocery store because the buses had stopped and my hands were numb from carrying bags. The app matched me with a driver named Ron in an older sedan, and his rating was high enough that I didn't think twice. When he pulled up, he looked like someone's tired Uncle Gray stubble baseball cap heavy coat. I checked the plate, got in the back, and immediately felt how warm the car was. Too warm. The heat blasted, like he was trying to fog the windows on purpose. Ron talked the whole time. Cheerful, almost fatherly. Crazy night, he said. People should stay home. Roads are no joke. I agreed because agreeing keeps conversations short. We merged onto the highway, and for a moment it felt normal. Tail lights ahead, lanes faint, under snow wipers working. Then traffic slowed, then stopped. A line of cars crept like a single organism, each one afraid to be the first to slide. Ron Sahil. This is why I take back roads, he said, and he moved to the shoulder. What? I asked, immediate panic. Shoulder's clear, he said casually. We'll sneak around. But the shoulder wasn't clear. It was packed snow and ice, and the edge dropped into a ditch. The car fishtailed slightly, and Ron corrected, laughing like it was fun. My stomach turned. Please don't, I said. Just stay in the lane. Ron waved one hand. Relax, he said. I've done this for years. He sounded proud. The sedan lurched forward, passing a few cars on the shoulder, and then the engine sputtered once like a cough. Ron frowned. The car lost power and rolled to a stop, half on the shoulder, half too close to the lane. Oh, come on, he muttered, turning the key. The engine clicked, struggled, then died. Wind slammed snow against the windows, like fists. Ron tried again. Click. Nothing. My heart hammered. Cars in the lane crawled by barely and their tires sprayed slush against us. Ron slapped the steering wheel. Battery, he said. Or starter. Damn cold. I looked at my phone, one bar then none. The highway sign ahead was a blur of white. The world outside the headlights was nothing. Ron leaned back and sighed, and then he did something that made my skin crawl. He turned the interior lights off completely. The cabin went dim, lit only by the dashboard glow. Why did you do that? I asked. Ron laughed softly. So we don't drain it more, he said. And so we don't attract idiots. Attract? Like we were bait. Like the highway was a dark forest. I tried the app. It showed. The car stopped. Then it froze. The storm was eating the signal. I tried the safety button. It spun. Failed. My phone buzzed with a calendar event I hadn't created. Stranded on the highway with a creep 0929p. Location. The shoulder is a cage. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. Do not let him turn off your light. Another message. Keep it bright. Witnesses love light. My hands shook. I turned my phone flashlight on and aimed it at the ceiling. The cabin filled with harsh white light. Ron's head snapped toward me. Turn that off, he said, voice suddenly sharp. Why? I asked. My voice came out small. Ron's jaw tightened. Because people will stop, he said, and the way he said it made my stomach drop. Not people will help. People will stop, like stopping was the danger. Like he'd already decided no help was coming. I want people to stop, I said, louder, and I kept the flashlight on. Ron stared at me in the rearview mirror, and his eyes were flat now, the friendly uncle gone. You don't understand, he said. You get someone pulling up, asking questions, it turns into a mess. We just wait. Heat's on. You're safe. Safe. That word again. He reached forward and turned the heater higher, and then quietly he clicked the door locks. The sound was small, but it punched through everything. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. My throat went dry. Unlock the doors, I said. Ron sighed, like I was annoying. Why? He asked. It's 20 degrees and blowing. You'd die out there. He wasn't wrong, and that's why it worked. The storm made his control sound like protection. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Happy New Year, a man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. The unknown number texted immediately. He's counting on the storm to do his work. Another message. Make him worry about his car, not you. I forced myself to think, what does a driver care about? Not my comfort. Not my safety. His car. His rating. His wallet. I opened the app and hit report safety issue. It froze her. I took a screenshot anyway. Then I did something I hated. I started coughing dramatically, hacking like I couldn't breathe, letting panic turn into performance. Ron glanced back, irritated. Stop, he snapped. You're going to fog everything up. I coughed harder and said between breaths, I have asthma. I need air. Ron swore, then cracked the front window a tiny bit. Cold wind knifed in. I used that moment to press my phone against the glass and waved the flashlight outward in a slow, deliberate pattern toward oncoming cars. Light is a language. A few cars passed, without slowing, too scared to stop. Then a pickup truck behind us slowed and pulled onto the shoulder a safe distance away, hazards flashing. Ron's whole body stiffened. God damn it, he muttered. The pickup driver, an older man in a reflective jacket, stepped out and walked toward us carefully, fighting wind. Ron rolled his window down 2 inches. We're fine, Ron called immediately, too fast. Just waiting for a tow. The man looked past Ron to me. I held my flashlight up and said loudly, my doors are locked. Ron's head whipped toward me, furious. Shut up, he hissed. The pickup driver's face changed. Unlock the doors, he said, not politely. Ron laughed, nervously. It's just for safety, he said. Storm, unlock them. The man repeated closer now, and I saw his hand resting near his belt, like he was ready for trouble. Ron hesitated one long second, then the locks clicked, and the pickup driver opened my door. Wind slammed snow into the cabin. I didn't care. I stumbled out and walked straight to the pickup, shaking so hard my teeth clacked. The man said, get in, and I did. From the pickup's window, I watched Ron sit in his dead sedan, staring forward, face hard like I'd ruined his plan. The pickup driver called highway patrol. Ron tried to explain it away, said he locked the doors because it was dangerous, said I was panicking, said he was helping. The patrol officer listened, then looked at me and asked the same question I'd come to hate. Did he threaten you? I said. He didn't have to. He locked me in on a highway, in a blizzard, and tried to keep the lights off so no one would stop. The officer's jaw tightened. They arranged a tow. They made Ron wait, but no one arrested him. No one called it what? It felt like a test, to see how isolated you could become before you stopped insisting on help. When I finally got home hours later, my hand still smelled like cold metal from the door handle. The app asked me to rate my driver. I stared at the screen and my stomach turned because even then, after everything, the system wanted a simple number instead of the truth. I gave 1 star and wrote, locked doors. Tried to keep me from signaling for help. A week later, I got a generic reply. We take safety seriously. I still think about the moment he turned off the interior lights. In a storm, darkness isn't just absence of light. It's a choice someone makes when they want the world to forget you're there. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard wasn't the driver yelling or speeding. It was the moment I realized he refused to turn on the heat on purpose, like he wanted the cold to make me too weak to argue. It was after midnight, Snow still coming down thick enough to swallow the sound of distant traffic, and the wind made every street feel abandoned. I'd left a friend's apartment when the storm warnings escalated, thinking I could slip home before the roads got worse. My ride arrived in a small hatchback, headlights dim behind a crust of ice. The driver's profile said Eli, and his rating was decent. I checked the plate, got into the back, and immediately felt the shock the cabin was freezing. Not just got in from outside cold. This was deep cold, the kind that makes your lungs sting. I rubbed my hands together and waited for the heater to kick on. It didn't. The fan wasn't running. The windows were clear because the car was basically an icebox. After a minute, I leaned forward and said lightly, "Could you turn the heat on?" Eli didn't answer. He stared straight ahead, shoulders stiff, hands at 10 and 2 like he was taking an exam. I tried again, still polite. "It's really cold back here." He finally spoke, without looking back. "Heat wastes gas," he said flatly. I blinked, confused. "It's snowing," I said. "You need defrost." "I can see," he replied, and there was something hostile in how simple he made it. The car rolled forward slowly, tires crunching, and the cold started to sink into my muscles. My fingertips went numb. My breath came out, white, fogging, in front of my face. I pulled my coat tighter and watched the map. The route looked normal at first, but then he took a turn off the main road onto a service street, where the snow was deeper and the lights were fewer. "This isn't the fastest way," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. Eli's jaw flexed. "Main roads are for idiots," he said. "They get stuck." The way he said idiots was not casual. It was contempt. I looked at the front console. The heat knob was set to cold. The fan was off. The rear vents were shut. He wasn't forgetting. He was choosing. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full screen. The driver refused to turn on the heat 1217A. Location. The cold is a tool. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "He wants you uncomfortable." Another message followed. "Ask." Once more, then changed the power dynamic. My teeth were starting to chatter. I forced my voice steady. "Turn the heat on," I said firmer. "Now." Eli finally glanced up at the rearview mirror, and his eyes were flat, almost bored. "You're bossy," he said. My stomach tightened. "I'm cold," I replied. "You're in a car," he said. "You'll live." Then he did something that made my skin crawl. He reached down and tapped the lock button. Click. The doors locked. The sound was quiet, but it landed like a weight in my chest. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I pulled again. Nothing. "Unlock the doors," I said, and my voice cracked slightly because the cold was getting into my throat. Eli smiled faintly, the first emotion he'd shown, and it wasn't kind. "Why?" he asked. "You going to jump into a blizzard?" The question was a trap, because the answer was yes. I would if the alternative was being controlled, but saying that out loud made me sound irrational. He drove deeper, into side streets, where snowbanks rose like walls. The cold was becoming physical pain. I started to realize what he was doing. Cold makes people quieter. Cold makes you conserve energy. Cold makes you stop talking and focus on surviving the moment. I tried the app's safety button. It spun, then failed. 1 bar of signal, then none. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," the man whispered. The call dropped. My blood went cold in a different way. The unknown number texted immediately. "He's using the weather like a weapon." Another message followed. "Make him need you." I stared at the dashboard and tried to think, what makes a driver need a passenger? Witnesses. Money. Ratings. Police. I opened my camera and quietly began recording, aiming at the front seats, catching his profile and the dashboard where the heat settings were clearly off. The cabin was so quiet I could hear my own teeth clicking. Eli noticed the glow of my screen. "Put that away," he snapped. "No filming." "Turn the heat on," I repeated louder, and I kept recording. His shoulders tightened. "You think you're tough," he said, voice rising. He suddenly slammed on the brakes hard. My body jerked forward against the seatbelt. The car slid a few inches in the snow and stopped in the middle of a narrow street lined with trees. No houses visible, just black shapes and white drift. He turned halfway in his seat to look at me directly. In the dim dashboard light, his face looked older than the profile photo, harder. "You want heat," he said. "Apologize." My stomach dropped. What I whispered. "Apologize for talking to me like I'm your servant," he said. "Then I'll turn it on." The cruelty of it hit me like a second storm. He wasn't saving gas. He was making warmth conditional. My phone buzzed. "He wants you to beg." Another message. "Don't. Get out in light." But there was no light. The street was dark. The blizzard outside was thick and loud. My body was shaking, and not just from fear. I made a decision that felt insane but necessary. I said, "Fine," and I stopped recording on purpose like I was complying. Eli's face relaxed slightly. He turned back, forward, smug. I pretended to put my phone away, then I did something else. I texted a new message to Jenna and hit send repeatedly until one bar of signal caught for half a second. The text went through as a green bubble. "If I stop responding, call police." Driver refusing heat. Locked doors. Off route. It was messy, but it was something. Eli didn't see the screen. He was staring ahead, satisfied. Then I made myself sound weaker. "I'm not feeling good," I said, breathy. "I think I'm going to pass out." Eli swore. He didn't want a medical emergency in his car. He didn't want blood or vomit or a dead passenger, not because he cared, but because consequences are inconvenient. He hesitated, then finally reached for the fan knob and turned it one notch. A weak puff of lukewarm air came out barely anything. He smirked, like he'd granted a gift. "Better?" he asked. "No," I said. "Stop at a gas station. I need water." He shook his head. "No stops," he said. I took my coat off and leaned forward slightly, acting dizzy, making it look like I was losing control. Eli's grip tightened on the wheel. He pulled the car forward again, faster, now aiming toward a brighter road. Finally, a strip of lights appeared through the snow, a 24-hour pharmacy sign, glowing like a beacon. Eli slowed near it, annoyed. "Fine," he snapped. 2 minutes. He pulled into the lot and stopped near the entrance. Before he could say anything else, I yanked the handle again. Still locked. I looked at him and said loud and clear, "Unlock. Now." Kaingwis. Kaingwis. No. Something in my voice must have shifted because he clicked the lock without another word. The door opened and cold wind punched me, but I ran straight into the pharmacy's bright light, cheeks burning, hands shaking. I didn't buy water. I walked straight to the counter and said, "Call the police." My driver locked the doors and refused heat. The cashier's eyes widened. Eli sat in the lot for a second, then drove away fast, tires spraying slush. Later safe at home, I realized my hands were still numb. The cold had left a slow ache in my fingers, like a bruise. The next day, the rideshare company emailed me a generic apology and a coupon. I stared at the coupon and laughed, once bitter, because what they didn't understand was this. He didn't try to hurt me with a knife. He tried to hurt me with the weather. And the worst part was how close it came to working, simply because my body wanted warmth more than my pride wanted conflict. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had in the blizzard was the one where the driver stopped the car in the middle of nowhere and spoke like we'd reached the part of the night where rules don't apply. It was late, well after midnight, and the storm had grown so thick the city felt like it was underwater. Everything muffled, everything white, streetlights glowing through snow like lanterns in a fog. I ordered a ride from a small diner because my friend bailed and I didn't want to walk even 3 blocks in that wind. The driver's name was Marcus, and he arrived in a dark sedan that looked clean enough. I checked the plate. I got in the back. The car smelled faintly, like pine, like someone trying to cover up something older. Marcus talked a lot at first. cheerful in that fake way people get when they want you to relax. Crazy storm, he said. Feels like the world ended. I gave short answers. I kept the app open. I watched the route. The car moved smoothly, too smoothly for those roads, and I noticed he wasn't driving toward my neighborhood. He was driving away from it, angling toward the outer roads where businesses shut down early and houses space out into darkness. You missed the turn, I said, calm but firm. Marcus laughed. No, I didn't, he replied. GPS is wrong in storms. Satellites get confused. It was a nice lie, because it sounded technical. My stomach tightened. Pull over, I said. I'll get another ride. Marcus's laughter stopped. The silence that followed was louder than anything. Pull over where? He asked, voice low. Outside the window there was nothing but blowing white and dark shapes of trees. Here, I said. Anywhere. Marcus shook his head slowly. You can't just get out, he said, like he was explaining physics to a child. You'd freeze. There it was again, the storm as justification. The car kept moving. My phone flickered between one bar and none. I tried sharing my trip with my brother. Failed. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Happy New Year, a man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full-screen HE. Stop the car in the middle of nowhere. 0107 AM. Location. No lights. No houses. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately, he wants you to ask permission to leave. Another message followed, make him stop where he can't control the space. I stared at the road ahead. Marcus turned onto a narrower lane that looked unplowed tires, crunching through deeper snow. The car slowed, then slowed more, and finally rolled to a stop. Not at a stop sign, not at a driveway, just stopped. The headlights cut a tunnel into the blizzard, but beyond that tunnel was nothing. Marcus put the car in park and let the engine idle. The heater kept blowing warm and steady, and for a second the cabin felt like a shelter. Then Marcus turned his head slightly, not fully, and said, calm. We'll wait. I didn't answer. My heart hammered. The world outside was empty and loud. Wind rocked the car. Snow hissed against the windows. Marcus reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet. Clean. The doors were sealed. Why are you stopping? I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded in that warm bubble. Marcus sighed like I'd asked something unreasonable. Because you're tense, he said. You need to calm down. I want to go home, I said. I paid for a ride home. Marcus laughed softly. Home, he repeated, like the word amused him. You know what's funny? People always say home like it's a guarantee. He turned a little more, enough that I could see his profile. His eyes were bright, in the dashboard glow. You can't go anywhere in a storm like this, he said. Not unless someone lets you. My stomach dropped. The sentence was too honest. I reached for the door handle anyway, feeling the uselessness immediately. Locked. Unlock it, I said. Marcus didn't move. If you open that door, he said, calm, the wind will fill the car with snow. We'll get stuck. Then you'll really be stranded. He spoke like he cared about the car, not me. I realized he was right about one thing: opening the door could make things worse. He had engineered a situation where every move I made had consequences I didn't want. That's what made it a trap. Marcus leaned back and said almost gently, tell me something. No, I said, immediate. Tell me where you're going tonight, he continued, like he hadn't heard. Who's waiting for you? Who would notice if you didn't show up? My blood went cold. I didn't answer. Marcus nodded slowly. See, he said, you don't have to be rude. We can just talk. Talk. The word sounded like a door closing. My phone buzzed with another text. Keep your lie simple. Another message. Say someone is tracking this car right now. I forced myself to sound irritated, not scared. My boyfriend is tracking my location, I lied. He'll call the cops if I'm not home in 10 minutes. Marcus smiled faintly. Boyfriend, he repeated, like he was tasting the word. He's not here, though, is he? The way he said it made my stomach turn because it was the truth he wanted me to feel. I needed him to worry about witnesses he couldn't see. I held my phone up, screen bright, and said, "He has the plate number." He already sent it to someone. Marcus's eyes flicked to the screen, then away. For the first time, I saw a crack of calculation. He didn't like unknown variables. He liked storms, because storms reduce variables. "You're lying," he said, but his voice wasn't sure. I decided to make the lie more expensive for him. I started recording video openly, aiming it at his face and the dashboard. "Hi," I said, loudly as if speaking to the camera. "My driver has stopped in the middle of nowhere. The doors are locked. If you see this, call police." Marcus's head snapped toward me. "Stop that," he hissed, and he reached back slightly, not touching me but close enough that I felt the threat. I kept recording. He swore and turned his face away like he didn't want his features captured. "You're going to get us killed," he said. And that phrase was almost funny because he was the one who stopped. He put the car in drive. Suddenly, the engine revved. The sedan lurched forward, tires spinning then catching. "Fine," he snapped. "You want to go, we go." He drove fast, too fast for the conditions, and I realized he was punishing me, now using speed as intimidation. But speed also meant movement towards somewhere with lights. After a few minutes, I saw the glow of an exit ramp sign, then a gas station beyond it, bright and open, a miracle of fluorescent light in the storm. Marcus slammed into the lot and stopped near the pumps. He unlocked the doors with a hard click like he was throwing a bone. "Get out," he said. "Find someone else." I didn't hesitate. I threw the door open and cold wind hit me so hard it stole my breath, but I ran into the gas station anyway, shaking hair instantly wet with snow. The clerk looked up. I said, "Call the police." Marcus didn't wait. His car peeled out of the lot, disappearing into white. Later, when I reported it, the company asked for details, time, location. They said they'd investigate, and maybe they did. But the part that stayed with me wasn't the report. It was his sentence. "In the dark, you can't go anywhere in a storm like this unless someone lets you." Because that's what these rideshare horror stories really are. Not ghosts, not monsters, just people using weather as a cage and acting like you should thank them for the shelter while they decide when you're allowed to leave. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the night my driver insisted on a shortcut and turned into a cemetery like it was the most normal thing in the world, to drive through rows of headstones when the roads outside were already empty. It was a weeknight in January, snow coming down in thick, wind-whipped sheets that made the whole city feel erased. I'd left a small countdown gathering early because the storm warnings kept escalating, and I didn't want to be out when everything finally shut down. My phone battery was low from the cold, and the rideshare app took forever to match me. When it finally did, I saw a driver named Cal in a grey sedan with a decent rating. The car pulled up with its headlights hazy behind ice, and the driver called my name like he was doing me a favor just by showing up. I checked the plate, got in the back seat, and immediately felt the relief of warmth. The heater was on the windows, only lightly fogged, and the wipers kept a narrow tunnel of visibility open. Cal talked in that steady, friendly tone people use when they want you to stop thinking. "Rough night," he said. "You're lucky you got a ride at all." I gave short answers and kept the map open. The route started normal, then traffic got weird, then the app redrew, then Cal said, casual, "I'm taking the shortcut. Main roads are a parking lot." I didn't like it, but the storm made me tired. And tired people accept explanations they wouldn't accept in daylight. We turned off the main road onto a narrower street where the plows hadn't been, then another, until the streetlights thinned and the world outside the glass was mostly white and black shapes. I watched the map dot move away from the grid. "Where are we?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Cal didn't look back. "Back way," he said. "Quicker." Then he slowed near a tall iron gate that appeared out of the snow like a fence around a secret. There was a stone sign, half buried in drifted snow, and I could still read the words carved into it. Memorial Park Cemetery. My stomach dropped. No, I said immediately. No, don't go in there. Cal laughed softly like I'd said something cute. It's just a road, he replied. Cemetery Road connects to the next avenue. Everybody uses it when the highway's bad. I stared at the gate. The path beyond it was a narrow lane lined with trees whose branches were heavy with ice. There were no houses, no businesses, no cameras I could see. Just the gate, the snow, and the dark. Turn around, I said, firmer. Calciel. Relax, he said. You want to sit in traffic or you want to get home? He rolled forward and the car passed through the open gate. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the wind changed. It sounded different inside, muted by trees, like the cemetery-absorbed noise. The lane curved and headstones started appearing on both sides, rows of white shapes rising out of snow like teeth. The headlights swept across carved names and dates, and the snow made everything look fresh and wrong, like the ground was trying to hide what it held. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full-screen shortcut through the cemetery 1244A. M. Location, where the lights stop. The only button was accept pulsing. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. He brought you there on purpose. Another message followed. Watch the gate. If it closes, you're not cutting through. My throat went dry. I twisted in my seat and looked back through the rear window. Snow blurred everything, but I could still see the iron gate behind us faintly. As we drove deeper, Cal kept his speed steady, too steady like he'd done this a lot. The road narrowed, and the headstones grew closer to the lane. A large stone mausoleum appeared ahead, blocky and dark, its facade covered in snow. Cal slowed near it, and my stomach clenched, because slowing here made no sense. Why are you slowing down? I asked. Cal's voice stayed calm. Road's slick, he said, but his hands didn't move, like someone worried about sliding. Then he did something that turned my fear into certainty. He reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet. Clean. The sound landed like a hammer in my chest. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I pulled again. Nothing. Unlock the doors, I said. Cal didn't answer right away. He drove a little farther, then stopped completely near the mausoleum headlights, washing across stone and snow. The car idled. The heater blew. Outside, the blizzard pressed against the windows like a living thing. We're just going to wait a second, Cal said, as if that was reasonable. Wait for what? My voice cracked slightly. Cal turned his head, just enough that I could see his cheek in the dashboard glow. You're tense, he said. People get weird in cemeteries. He said it like he was amused. I want to leave, I said. No. Cal's laugh was small. You can't just hop out, he replied. Look outside. You'll disappear in that snow. He wasn't wrong, and that was the trap. The storm made the car feel like the only shelter, even while he controlled the locks. I tried the rideshare safety button. The screen spun and failed. Signal flickered between one bar and none. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Happy New Year. A man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. The unknown number texted immediately. He likes places where help feels impossible. Another message. Make noise. Cemeteries have staff, even in storms. I stared at the mausoleum and noticed something else. A small light in the distance, faint and yellow, like a caretaker building or office. It was far, but it was proof there were people somewhere nearby. I forced myself to breathe, and then I did the one thing I'd been taught not to do in polite society. I made myself a problem. I started honking the horn. Not polite little taps. Full pressure, long blasts, over and over, until the sound echoed off stone and trees, and the headstones looked like they were listening. Cal's head snapped toward me, furious. Stop, he hissed. He reached forward and slapped the steering wheel, then turned to me with real anger now. What is wrong with you? Unlock the doors, I said, and I kept my hand near the horn. Cal's jaw flexed. He looked forward then toward the mausoleum, then back at me like he was deciding whether to escalate. I honked again louder. The sound carried into the dark. Cal swore and grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make his intent clear control. "You're making it worse," he snarled. I jerked my arm away and screamed, "Help!" The word felt huge in the small cabin. I screamed it again. My voice sounded wrong, like it belonged to someone else, but I kept going, because fear is quieter than danger, and I needed to be louder than both. Then, through the windshield, I saw movement, a flashlight beam cutting through snow from the direction of that distant light. Another beam joined it. Someone was coming. Cal saw it too. His whole body tightened. "Great," he muttered, and his tone shifted from calm to annoyed, like I'd ruined his night. He threw the car into drive tires, spinning slightly, and the sedan lurched forward along the cemetery lane. The flashlight beams grew brighter behind us, bouncing, moving faster. Cal drove quicker, now not reckless but urgent. The gate came back into view through the snow. As we approached it, I saw the iron bars were no longer fully open. They were swinging inward slowly, like someone had triggered them to close. My stomach dropped. The unknown number texted, "The gate's closing." Another message. "He's running out of options." Cal accelerated and pushed through, just as the gate narrowed the metal, scraping the side of the car with a horrible sound. Then we were out back on a normal street, streetlights returning, like weak reassurance. Cal didn't stop. He drove hard for 2 blocks, then abruptly pulled over near a lit intersection and slammed the brakes. The locks clicked off. "Get out," he snapped. "Now." I didn't hesitate. I shoved the door open, and cold wind hit me, but the light and the traffic made me feel like I could breathe again. I stepped onto the sidewalk and immediately took a photo of his plate. Cal peeled away tires, spraying slush, disappearing into white. When I reported it later, the company asked for details, asked if he threatened me, asked if I was sure it was intentional. I said. He locked the doors and stopped beside a mausoleum in a blizzard. They sent a generic apology and said they'd investigate. But what stayed with me wasn't the email. It was the way he used the cemetery like a tool, like he knew the weather would make me hesitate to run, like he knew isolation doesn't always require distance. Sometimes it only requires a place people don't want to stop even when they hear someone honking for help. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the one where I checked the trunk at the start of the ride, and it was empty, and by the end of the ride it clearly wasn't, and the only question was what had been added, while I was trapped in the back seat with the doors locked. It happened on a night when the snow was so thick the city felt like it had shrunk, like the storm had pushed everyone indoors, and left only the desperate and the reckless outside. I'd been visiting a relative in a neighborhood with narrow streets and terrible plowing, and I didn't want to risk walking even a few blocks with the wind cutting through my coat. The app matched me with a driver named Hector in a dark SUV. His rating was high, and his profile photo looked friendly, the kind of face you assume is safe because you see it in daylight. When the SUV pulled up, the driver popped the trunk automatically like he was trained. "I'll get it," he said, stepping out quickly. I had one small duffel bag and a grocery tote. Nothing heavy. He took the duffel, and as he placed it inside, I saw the trunk clearly in the streetlight glow, empty, carpeted space. No blankets, no spare tire hump visible, nothing piled, nothing hidden. It looked normal. That brief visual made me relax. I got into the back seat, buckled up, and watched the map. The heater was on low enough to keep the windows from fogging too much. Hector talked the way drivers talk, when they want you to stop paying attention. "Storm's crazy," he said. "People shouldn't be out." I gave short answers. We pulled away tires, crunching over packed snow, and for the first 5 minutes, everything felt ordinary. Then Hector missed a turn. The app redrew. He didn't explain. I waited a beat, then asked calmly, "Did the route change?" Hector chuckled. "GPS hates storms," he said. "I know a better way." The phrase again. Better way. Shortcut. My stomach tightened. He turned off the main road onto a darker street, lined with parked cars half buried under snow. The streetlights were fewer. The world outside the glass looked like a blank page. My phone flickered between one bar and none. I tried to share the trip with my cousin. Failed. I tried again. Failed. The SUV kept moving, and then Hector reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet, clean. The sound made my heart jump because it meant choice had left the car. I grabbed the handle lightly. Locked. Hey, I said, keeping my voice steady. Could you unlock the doors? I just like knowing they work. Hector laughed softly. Why would you need that? He asked. It's a blizzard. He said it like the weather itself was an argument. Because I want them unlocked, I replied firmer. Hector didn't answer. He drove a few more blocks, then slowed near an empty stretch of road and pulled into a small lot beside a closed building. The lot lights were on but dim, and the snow made the edges of the space disappear. He stopped. The engine idled. The heater blew. We're going to wait, he said, like he was talking to someone who owed him patience. Wait for what? I asked. Hector sighed, like I was tiring. I got a message, he said. Road ahead is blocked. I'll reroute. He picked up his phone, tapped, then put it down. He didn't reroute. He didn't move. He just sat there, breathing slow, staring ahead. The silence felt intentional. I tried the app's emergency options. Spinning. Failed. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full screen. The trunk was empty. Then it wasn't 0132A. Location. You saw it empty first. The only button was accept pulsing. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. He showed you the empty trunk on purpose. Another message followed. He wanted you to remember it. My throat went dry. I didn't want to believe that. I stared at Hector's shoulders at the way he kept his posture relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. Then I heard a soft thump from behind the back seat. Not from the road. Not from the suspension. A thump, like something inside the vehicle shifted weight. I froze. The thump came again, followed by a faint scraping like fabric against carpet. My skin went cold. What was that? I asked. Hector didn't react. Wind, he said immediately. Too fast. That's not wind, I said, and my voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Hector's jaw tightened. Stop, he muttered. Don't start. Another thump. This time closer, heavier, like something in the trunk hit the wall of the compartment. Hector's hands tightened on the wheel. He finally spoke low and sharp. It's your bag shifting. My stomach dropped because my bag wasn't heavy enough to thump like that, and I knew it because I'd carried it. My mind raced through possibilities. I didn't want the trunk latch loose, the spare tire shifting something rolling. But I'd seen the trunk empty. No spare exposed. No tools. No loose items. Empty. My phone buzzed. He doesn't want you to look. Another message. Make him open it in light. I forced myself to breathe and said, pull up to a gas station. I need to use the bathroom. Hector laughed harsh. No stops, he said. Storm. Be smart. The way he said be smart made my stomach twist, because it was the same tone people use when they want you to obey and call it logic. Another thump hit, and then something else, a faint sound that made my heart stutter, like a muffled knock from inside a closed space. Once. Then again. I stared at Hector's headrest, like it might explain the world. Open the trunk, I said quietly. Hector didn't move. Open it, I repeated louder. Hector exhaled through his nose, like he was angry at the inconvenience of my fear. You're imagining things, he said. You people watch too many videos. I had nothing to lose by making noise. I raised my voice. Open the trunk, I shouted, and the words filled the cabin like a flare. Hector flinched. He glanced around the empty lot, irritated, then slammed the SUV into drive, and pulled out tires, spinning slightly. He drove toward the nearest strip of lights, not because he wanted to help me, but because shouting creates risk for him. A few minutes later, fluorescent glow appeared through the snow. A gas station, open sign, bright and ugly in the storm. Hector pulled in fast and stopped near the pumps. He kept the engine running. Bathrooms inside, he said, voice tight. Go. The doors clicked. Unlock. I yanked mine open, and cold wind punched me, but I didn't run inside. I went straight to the back of the SUV. The trunk was still closed. I looked through the rear window and saw Hector watching me in the mirror, face hard. I raised my phone and started recording, making sure the camera saw his plate and the SUV make and model. Then I reached for the trunk handle. It was locked. Of course. I turned toward the driver's window and shouted, "Open it." Hector rolled his window down a crack. "Get back in," he snapped. "You're making a scene." "Open the trunk," I repeated, and I kept my phone recording. A man at the pump 2 lanes over glanced toward us. Another person inside the gas station looked out. Hector saw them. His jaw flexed. For a second he hesitated, calculating. Then the trunk popped open with a click. I lifted it, heart pounding, and my blood went cold. My duffel bag was there, but it wasn't alone. A large black contractor bag sat beside it, glossy and wet with melted snow like it had been placed there recently. It hadn't been there when I saw the trunk empty. There were also 2 folded blankets I hadn't seen before, thick and dark, shoved against the side. The air that came out of the trunk smelled sharp, like cleaning chemicals, trying to cover something older. I froze, staring, trying to process. Hector shouted from the driver's seat, "Close it." Another thump came from inside the trunk area, not from my duffel, not from the contractor bag, shifting something deeper, like the sound came from beneath the blankets. I stepped back so fast I almost slipped. My phone buzzed. "Do not reach in." Another message. "Grab your bag and leave the rest." I snatched my duffel by the strap, without touching anything else, and backed away. Hector's voice rose angry now. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Close the trunk." I didn't. I turned and shouted toward the gas station door. "Call the police." The man at the pump looked startled, then alert. Hector swore and slammed his car into gear. He didn't even wait for the trunk to be fully down. He accelerated out of the lot, the trunk swinging, and for a split second the open trunk revealed a flash of something pale under the blankets before the lid bounced and fell shut. The SUV disappeared into white. I stood shaking under the gas station lights, snow stinging my face, phone still recording my own breathing, like proof I existed. Police arrived, asked questions, asked if I'd touched anything, asked for the plate. I gave them the video. They tried to locate him. They said they'd look into it. But the part that stayed with me wasn't the paperwork. It was the way he opened the trunk at the start like a demonstration, like he wanted me to register emptiness as safety, so that later when the trunk was full of things that didn't belong to me, my brain would understand what my mouth didn't want to say. In a blizzard, you're trapped twice, by weather outside, and by the vehicle you're inside. And if someone wants to move something unseen, the storm gives them the perfect excuse. Don't get out. Don't look. Just stay warm, and trust me. That night taught me trust can be engineered in small, quiet ways, and the most dangerous thing in winter isn't always the road. Sometimes it's what the road helps someone hide. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the hour my driver kept driving in circles, and I realized he wasn't lost. He was calibrating how long he could keep me trapped before I stopped expecting to arrive anywhere. It was late January, the kind of storm where snow doesn't fall so much as it swarms and the wind makes every intersection feel like a tunnel. I'd left a small office party early because the roads were getting worse and people were starting to panic. My phone battery was low from the cold, and my hands were shaking from exhaustion more than fear at first. I ordered a ride and got matched with a driver named Sanjay in a white sedan. The profile looked normal, the rating was high, and the car arrived quickly, which made me grateful enough to lower my guard. I checked the plate, got into the back seat, buckled up and watched the map. The heater was on, the windshield was clear, and for the first few minutes it felt like the storm was just background noise. Sanjay didn't talk much. He just hummed, faintly, with the radio turned low, a station that faded in and out like it was fighting the weather too. We made the first few turns correctly. Then the app said, "Turn right," and he turned left. The route redrew. I waited a beat, then said casually, "It wants you to go the other way." Sanjay replied, without looking back, "Road closed." That was plausible. Storm. Closures. I nodded and watched the new route. A few blocks later the app said, "Continue straight," and he made a U-turn. The route redrew again. My stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Sanjay laughed softly. "GPS is confused," he said. "I know where I'm going." Then he turned onto a street I recognized, past the same snow-covered bus stop I'd seen 10 minutes earlier, and my brain finally stopped making excuses. "We just passed that stop," I said, voice sharper now. Sanjay didn't answer. He drove on slow and steady tires, crunching. The snow outside made it hard to tell direction, but landmarks don't lie. We passed the bus stop again, then again. My throat went dry. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full-screen driving in circles for an hour 0111 a.m. Location. You've seen this sign before. The only button was accept pulsing. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "He's not lost." Another message followed. "He's testing your patience." My hands shook. I opened the app and looked at the route history. The line on the map looked like scribbles, loops over the same few blocks a child's drawing. The ETA kept changing, but never got closer. I tried sharing the trip. Failed. 1 bar of signal, then none. I tried the in-app safety button. Spinning. Failed. The storm was eating every connection, like it wanted the world to stay quiet. "Pull over," I said firmly. "I'm getting out." Sanjay finally spoke, with a sigh, like I'd inconvenienced him. "You can't get out," he said. "It's a blizzard." The way he said it was almost the same tone other drivers used, like the weather was a universal excuse for control. "Pull over somewhere lit," I said. "Gas station. Anywhere." Sanjay didn't. He kept looping. My fear started to change shape. At first, it was panic. Then it became something worse, confusion. Confusion is what circles do. They make you doubt your sense of time. They make you wonder if you're the one misreading the streets. They make you tired, and tired people comply. I looked at Sanjay in the rearview mirror. His face was calm, eyes half-lidded, like he was driving a route he knew by heart. He glanced at me just once, and the look wasn't aggressive. It was curious, like he was checking how close I was to giving up. My phone buzzed. "Don't argue about direction." Another message. "Force a new variable." I needed something that broke the loop, something that made him change behavior. I decided to create witnesses in the simplest way possible noise. I called my friend Jenna and put it on speaker, hoping the call would go through even if data didn't. It rang. For a second I thought it failed. Then Jenna answered groggy. "Hello," I made my voice loud and clear, projecting calm I didn't feel. "Hey, I'm in a rideshare," I said. "We keep looping. Can you stay on the phone? If we disconnect, call the police." Jenna woke up instantly. "Where are you?" she asked. I looked out the window, heart pounding, and read the nearest street sign as we passed it again. Willow and 8th. "Willow and 8th," I said loudly. Sanjay's shoulders tightened. He glanced in the mirror, and for the first time there was irritation in his eyes. Jenna said, "What's the plate?" I leaned forward slightly and read it off the app and from the dashboard reflection, repeating it clearly. Sanjay's jaw flexed. "Why are you doing that?" he asked, voice low. "Because we're going in circles," I replied, and I kept my tone blunt. "And my friend is listening." The silence that followed was heavy. The wind outside pushed snow across the road like smoke. Sanjay turned down a street that wasn't part of the loop. My stomach tightened. "Where are you going?" I asked. Sanjay shook it. "Okay," he said, like he was conceding. "I'll take you." But his voice sounded annoyed, like he'd lost a game. He drove faster, now pushing through snow, and the loop fell behind us. Relief hit so fast it made me dizzy. Then I saw the problem. He wasn't driving toward my home. He was driving toward the industrial edge of town, where streets were darker and buildings were closed. Jenna's voice on speaker said, "Are you okay?" I said. "Stay on," and my throat tightened. Sanjay reached down and clicked the locks. Click. My stomach dropped. "Unlock them," I said immediately. Sanjay didn't answer. He pulled into a parking lot beside a closed warehouse, lights off, snow drifting against loading docks. He stopped. The engine idled, The heater blew. Jenna said louder now. What's happening? I didn't answer because my mouth had gone dry. Sanjay turned slightly and said, calm. Tell your friend to hang up. Jenna shouted, who is this? Sanjay's eyes flicked to the phone, then to me. Hang up, he repeated, and his voice was no longer friendly. My hands shook. I raised my voice toward the phone and said, Jenna, call 911 now. Tell them I'm locked in a car in a lot, by a warehouse near Willow and 8th. Jenna said, I'm calling. Sanjay swore under his breath. He slammed the car into drive and peeled out of the lot, tires spinning, and for a second the car fishtailed on ice. He drove hard back toward brighter roads, like he'd suddenly remembered consequences existed. He pulled up to a lit intersection, where other cars were stopped at a light, and he unlocked the doors with an angry click. Get out, he snapped. I didn't hesitate. I shoved the door open and cold wind hit me, but the sight of other cars felt like oxygen. I stepped out and ran toward a nearby convenience store phone, still on speaker. Jenna was still there, breathless, saying she was on with dispatch. Behind me, Sanjay's sedan sped off into snow. Later, police took my statement and asked how long he'd been looping. I said long enough to make me doubt my own head. The app refunded me automatically, like money was the point. The driver's profile disappeared. I never found out why he looped. Maybe he was stalling for someone. Maybe he was waiting for my phone to die. Maybe he liked the feeling of controlling time. But the circles did what they were meant to do. They made me tired. They made me confused. And for a while they made me quietly accept that I might never arrive, which is the most dangerous mental place a person can be in when someone else is. Driving. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the one where my driver kept drifting and nodding, and I couldn't tell if he was falling asleep at the wheel or pretending, because either way my life was in the hands of someone who didn't care if we made it to the end of the street. It was after 2 in the morning, snow still falling hard, the wind sounding like an animal scraping at the car. I'd been stranded at a friend's building because the storm got worse faster than predicted, and when I finally ordered a ride, it matched me with a driver named Derek in a dark sedan. He arrived late, pulling up slow, and when I opened the back door I smelled something stale and sweet like energy drinks and old coffee. The cabin was warm but messy, fast food wrappers, a blanket on the passenger seat, a dash light blinking low fuel. Derek didn't greet me. He just stared forward and said, "You're going to," reading my destination like he was confirming it to himself. I said yes, and buckled in. As we pulled away, I noticed his eyes. They were red-rimmed, half-lidded, the gaze of someone fighting fatigue. His head dipped slightly at stop signs, then lifted. At first, I told myself he was just concentrating in the snow, but within minutes the dipping became more obvious. His chin would drop toward his chest for a beat, then jerk back up like he'd been pulled by a string. The car drifted toward the right line, tires crunching over the edge of packed snow, then corrected. My stomach tightened. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Derek grunted. "Yeah," he said. "Long night." His voice was flat, uninterested. We reached a stretch of road with no other cars, just white and darkness, and that's when the swerving got worse. His head dipped longer this time. The car drifted left, crossing the faint center line. My heart hammered. "Hey," I said, louder. "Can you pull over? I can call another ride." Derek laughed, once harsh and short. "In this," he said, "no one's coming faster than me." The way he said it sounded like a threat disguised as logic. My phone buzzed and a calendar event I hadn't created opened full screen. He fell asleep at the Wheel 0219A. Location where no one is watching. The only button was accept pulsing. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately, "Watch his hands." Another message followed. This might be an act. My throat went dry. I watched Derek's hands on the wheel. They looked steady. Too steady. Even when his head dipped, his hands didn't slacken the way sleepy hands do. The car drifted, but not randomly. It drifted in controlled arcs, like he was letting it happen then correcting, like he was showing me what could happen if he wanted it to. He dipped his head again, longer, and the car slowed slightly, then accelerated again when he lifted. My stomach turned. If he was truly asleep, we were in danger. If he was pretending, we were in a different kind of danger, because he was using the idea of an accident as intimidation. I tried sharing my trip. Failed. Signal flickered and vanished. I tried the safety button. Spinning. Failed. The storm made every tool useless. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Happy New Year, a man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. The unknown number texted immediately. He knows you can't call out. Another message. You need to force. A stop under light. I scanned ahead for anything lit. Gas station. Pharmacy. Anything. The road was empty. Snow turned every sign into a blur. Derek's head dipped again, and this time he mumbled something under his breath that didn't sound like English. The car drifted toward a snowbank and corrected at the last second. My heart felt like it was punching my ribs. I leaned forward and said firm, "Pull over at the next light." "No." Derek didn't answer. He kept driving, and his mouth curled into something that might have been a smile. That was when the fear shifted into anger, because I realized he could have pulled over any time. He didn't want to. He wanted me to sit there and imagine the accident. He wanted me to bargain for my own safety. I did the only thing I could think of. I started recording video, openly aiming it at his face, and the road narrating loud enough for the recording to capture. "It's kaksi menta kolme a." I said. My rideshare driver keeps drifting and closing his eyes. I'm asking him to pull over. Derek's head snapped up fully. For the first time, he looked at me in the mirror with clear focus. Too clear. "Turn that off," he said, voice sharp. "No recording." "Then pull over," I replied. Derek laughed softly. "You're dramatic," he said. "It's snow. Car, movies." He dipped his head again exaggeratedly, this time like he was mocking me. The car drifted toward the center line. A jolt of pure panic hit me, and I yelled, "Stop." Derek jerked the wheel, and the car corrected, but he did it too late on purpose, close enough that my body felt the near miss like a physical blow. He exhaled, like he was amused. "See," he said. "We're fine." My hands shook so hard my phone rattled. I kept recording. Derek reached down and clicked the locks. Click. My stomach dropped. "Why are you locking the doors?" I asked. Derek didn't answer. He turned off onto a side road with fewer lights. "No," I said, immediately. "No, stay on the main road." Derek's voice stayed calm. "Shortcut," he said, and the word made me want to scream. The side road narrowed trees, leaning in snow deeper, and Derek's head dipped again. This time, I didn't wait. I slammed my hand against the window and yelled loud help. It felt ridiculous, but the sound was for me as much as anyone else to break the silent spell of being trapped. Then through the snow ahead, I saw a glow, an all-night diner sign, red neon blurred by falling snow. I pointed. "Pull in there," I said, loud and commanding. Derek hesitated. His jaw flexed. He didn't want to stop somewhere with people, but he also didn't want a screaming passenger on camera. He turned into the diner lot sharply and stopped near the entrance. The moment the car stopped, I yanked the handle. "Locked." "Unlock," I said. Derek stared forward, breathing heavier. Then the locks clicked off with a hard sound. I threw the door open and cold air hit me, but I ran into the diner anyway, pushing through warm air and bright lights and the smell of coffee like it was safety itself. People looked up. The waitress froze mid-step. I said, "Call the police. My driver is either falling asleep or messing with me." He locked the doors. Through the window I watched Derek's sedan reverse and speed out of the lot tires, spraying slush. Later, when I calmed down enough to think, I realized the detail that haunted me the moment I started recording. He woke up completely, not groggy, not confused, focused. That made me believe the nodding was a performance, a way to make me feel helpless, while keeping plausible deniability. If someone asks, he can say he was tired. The storm was hard, he didn't mean anything. But the locks, the shortcuts, the timing, those aren't accidents. Their choices. And winter storms make those choices easier to hide, because everyone assumes danger is coming from the weather, not from the person who has you trapped inside the warm box moving through it. The moment I slid into the back seat, he adjusted the rearview mirror downward until I could see my own eyes staring back at me, and I knew he hadn't done it to watch the road. It was the kind of blizzard night where everything outside the glass looked like static snow, whipping sideways so hard it erased depth perception, and the wind made the whole car shudder at stoplights. I'd ordered the ride from a late shift, exhausted, cold, and trying to do everything right. Plate matched, make and model matched. Driver photo close enough in the dark. I sat behind the passenger seat, buckled in, and kept the app open with the route visible. The driver's name was Keith. He was quiet, which should have been comforting, but silence in a storm can feel like someone saving words for later. We pulled away tires, crunching through packed snow, and the cabin was warm enough to fog the edges of the windows. I watched the mirror, and he watched me through it. Not a quick glance, the way drivers check backseat movement, but a steady gaze, like he was reading my face the way people read weather. After 1 minute of that, he reached up and adjusted the mirror again slower, this time until the reflection framed my torso and lap perfectly centered. My stomach tightened. I leaned slightly to the side, and the mirror followed my movement, with a tiny correction like he wanted to keep me in the center of the frame. I told myself it could be coincidence. It wasn't. "Can you angle the mirror up?" I asked, trying to sound casual like I was doing him a favor. Keith didn't answer. He kept driving, and the mirror stayed trained on me. I felt my pulse in my throat. Snow hit the windshield so hard the wipers sounded strained. The road narrowed into a darker stretch, and he turned the radio down until it was barely a whisper. The quiet made the mirror feel louder. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen. The mirror was adjusted to watch me. 1258 A.M. The location. His eyes won't leave the glass. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. He set it like a camera. Another message followed. "Change your position without warning. See if he tracks you." My hands shook, but I forced myself to do it. I slid across the seat toward the driver's side, slow at first, then a little quicker like I was reaching for something in my bag. The mirror shifted almost instantly to follow me, a smooth little adjustment that confirmed everything. I froze. Keith didn't look back. He didn't need to. He corrected the mirror with 2 fingers, like it was second nature. I hated the feeling of being managed by glass. "Hey," I said, firmer. "I'm not comfortable with you aiming the mirror at me." Keith finally spoke, voice calm and almost amused. "I'm driving," he said. "I need to see." "You need to see the road," I replied. "Not me." The corner of his mouth lifted in the mirror, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're safe," he said. And that word made my stomach drop, because it always arrives when you aren't. The route on my phone showed we should have stayed on the main avenue, but Keith turned onto a side road lined with unlit buildings and snowbanks tall as fences. "Why are you turning?" I asked. "Shortcut," he said, like all the others. The SUV's heater hummed. The storm pressed against the windows. I tried sharing my trip with my sister. Failed. 1 bar flickered, then none. I tried the in-app safety button. Spinning. Failed. The blizzard was swallowing every lifeline. Keith's eyes stayed on me in the mirror, steady and patient. The patience was the scariest part, because it meant he wasn't rushed. He didn't need to lunge or threaten. He could just keep looking until I broke first. I decided to create witnesses the only way I could. I called my friend Jenna and put it on speaker, praying the call would go through, even with bad signal. It rang. Then it connected. "Hello," Jenna sounded half asleep. I made my voice loud and clear. "Hey, I'm in a rideshare," I said. "Can you stay on the phone?" Keith's eyes narrowed in the mirror. Jenna said, "What's wrong?" I didn't answer that part yet. I said I'm almost home, but the driver keeps aiming his mirror at me. If we disconnect, call the police. Keith's jaw tightened. "You don't need to do that," he said, still calm, but the calm had a hard edge now. Jenna said plate. I leaned forward and read it aloud, slowly, making sure the phone captured it. Keith glanced down briefly like he was checking something, then lifted his gaze back to the mirror. I watched his hand drift toward the door lock button. Click. The door's locked. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the handle. Locked. Keith, I said, and I hated how steady my voice sounded compared to the panic in my chest. Unlocked the doors. Keith didn't answer. He drove a little farther and slowed near a long stretch of snow-covered lot beside a closed building. No other cars. No people. Just wind and white. He stopped. The engine idled. The heater blew. The mirror kept me centered. Jenna's voice said louder. What's happening? Keith spoke, as if Jenna wasn't there. Hang up, he said, and his tone was suddenly not friendly at all. No, I said. Unlock the doors and take me to a lit place. Keith exhaled through his nose, annoyed like I was being difficult. You're dramatic, he muttered. It's a mirror. He reached up and tilted it slightly higher, just enough that it looked like compliance, then tilted it right back down to my lap again, a small petty move that made my skin crawl, like he wanted me to know he could do what he wanted and still pretend he hadn't. My phone buzzed with another text. He's playing with the angle. Another message. Make him stop under. Cameras, not kindness. I looked past the windshield and saw through the snow, a faint glow a few blocks away. A 24-hour gas station sign, bright and ugly. Pull there, I said, loud pointing. Now. Keith's eyes flicked toward the glow. For a second he didn't move like he was deciding. Jenna said, I'm calling 911. Keith's head turned a fraction, and I saw real irritation flash across his face. He put the car back in drive and rolled toward the lights faster than he'd been going, not careful anymore. He pulled into the gas station lot and stopped near the pumps, where cameras were obvious, and the fluorescent lights made everything look exposed. The locks clicked off. Get out, he snapped. I didn't hesitate. I threw the door open, and cold wind hit me, but I ran straight toward the building phone, still on speaker. Jenna was still talking breathless, saying she'd reached dispatch. I looked back once and saw Keith sitting in the driver's seat staring at me in the mirror, even though I was outside like the mirror was the only way he knew how to look. Then he drove away tires, spraying slush, disappearing into the storm. Later, when an officer took my statement, he asked if the driver touched me, if he threatened me. I said no, not directly. I said the mirror was the threat. The mirror was the message. Because in a blizzard, you're already trapped by weather, and when someone angles a piece of glass to keep you in frame, it doesn't feel like curiosity. It feels like ownership, like he's reminding you that even in the safest looking part of the car, the back seat, you can still be turned into something being watched instead of someone being taken home. He said my full name before I even opened the door, and in the middle of a blizzard that felt like the most intimate kind of threat. Like someone had reached into my life and pulled out the part I never hand to strangers. It was late January, snow piling fast, wind roaring through buildings so hard it made the street lights flicker. I'd just left a co-worker's small gathering early because the storm was escalating and I didn't want to be stranded. My phone was at 15% and dropping the cold, draining it like a parasite. I requested a rideshare from outside a building lobby, standing under an awning where the snow blew in sideways anyway. The app matched me with a driver named Martin. It showed the usual car, make and model, plate, number, a profile photo that looked normal enough. I told myself to be careful. I repeated the checklist in my head, plate name confirmation. The car arrived, pulling up slow hazards blinking. I stepped closer and squinted at the plate through slush. It matched. The window lowered slightly, and the driver leaned across the seat. Nguyen Thai, he said, clearly pronouncing it like he'd practiced. Not my first name. Not the shortened version I use everywhere. My full name. My stomach dropped so hard, it felt like nausea. I froze, with my hand on the door handle. Yeah, I managed keeping my voice steady by force. That's me. Martin smiled friendly on the surface. Hop in, he said. It's brutal out here. I didn't move. The snow kept hitting my face. My fingers were going numb, but my instincts were louder than the cold. "How do you know my full name?" I asked. Martin blinked like the question surprised him. "It's on the account," he said casually. "I see what they give me." That was a lie, or at least it didn't match my experience. Rideshare apps usually show drivers your first name, maybe an initial, not your full legal name, not in a way they would say out loud, like a roll call. "It's not," I said quietly. Martin's smile tightened. "Maybe you put it in," he said, shrugging. "People forget." The wind shoved snow under the awning. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed. Full screen HE knew my full name before I got in 1141p. Location. That information didn't come from the app. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "Do not get in yet." Another message followed. "Ask him to confirm your destination out loud." My throat went dry. I forced myself to act normal enough that I didn't trigger whatever he was hoping for. "Okay," I said, still outside the car. "What's my destination?" Martin laughed lightly. "You want me to say your address out here?" he asked, and the way he said it made my skin crawl because it sounded like he enjoyed the idea. "Just the cross street," I said. Martin hesitated, a fraction of a second too long. He said, looking down at his phone, "It's Maple something." My stomach tightened. My street isn't Maple anything. The app showed my actual destination clearly. If he was truly my driver, he wouldn't be guessing. The unknown number texted, "That's not confusion. That's cover. Another message: if you enter, you confirm." I stepped back from the car. "I'm going to cancel," I said, and I watched Martin's face change in an instant, friendly to flat, like a mask slipping. "Don't," he said quickly. "You'll get charged." "I don't care," I replied, thumb already hovering over the cancel button. Martin's voice sharpened. "Look, it's freezing. Just get in. I'll take you home." Home. The word landed like a hook, because he'd said it with confidence, like he knew more than he should. "How do you know where I live?" I asked, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. Martin's eyes flicked to me, then to the mirrors, like he was suddenly aware of surroundings. "Because you're going where you always go," he said. My blood went cold. Always. Routine. Pattern. That wasn't something a normal driver says to a stranger. I held my phone up like a shield and took a photo of the plate, making sure the flash reflected off the wet metal. Martin's hand shot up to block his face, instinctively. "Why are you taking pictures?" he snapped. "For safety," I said. "And because you said my full name." Martin's jaw flexed. "You're paranoid," he muttered. Then he did something that made my heart lurch. He opened his door slightly, like he might step out. The snow and wind hit him, and he hesitated, then stayed inside, but the message was clear. He wanted me to feel like the boundary between us was thin. My phone buzzed again. "Go back inside. Get to people." Another message. "Do not walk to a dark corner." I backed toward the lobby doors, without turning my back, keeping my eyes on him. Martin leaned out slightly and called calm again. "Nguyen Tai, don't be like that. I'm your ride." Hearing my full name spoken a second time in that empty, storm-muted street made my skin crawl. It was like he wanted to plant it in the air like a spell. I slipped back into the lobby, and the warm air hit my face so hard I almost cried. I stood near the security desk where a guard was half watching the Weather Channel on a small screen. "Can I stand here?" I asked quickly. "There's a car outside. He keeps saying my full name." The guard's head snapped up. He looked out the glass doors. The hazards were still blinking. Martin was still there, watching the lobby through the windshield. The guard picked up his radio and said something quiet. I watched my phone and saw my actual rideshare driver icon on the map, still approaching from several minutes away. A different car, different plate. That confirmed it. Martin wasn't my ride. He was just someone who watched pickup points in storms, relying on cold and urgency to push people into the wrong car. But that still didn't explain the full name. That detail was the needle under the fingernail. I cancelled the ride request and immediately made a new one from inside the lobby so I wouldn't have to stand outside. While I waited, Martin did something subtle. He pulled forward 2 spaces, repositioning so his car was closer to the doors, like he wanted to be, the first thing I saw if I stepped out. The guard stepped closer to the glass and stared back. Martin held the stare for a few seconds, then finally drove off slow, not rushed like he didn't feel, chased off like he'd simply chosen to leave. My real driver arrived 5 minutes later, and I checked everything twice before I got in. I didn't relax until the car was moving, on a well-lit road, with other traffic visible, and even then my hands were shaking. When I got home, I went through my accounts like a person checking locks after a break-in. My full name was visible in one place. I'd forgotten an old loyalty account tied to my phone number, the same number linked to my rideshare. If someone had access to leaked data, if someone had a cheap lookup service, if someone had practiced this long enough, they could connect dots most people don't realize exist. That night taught me the scariest part of rideshare horror isn't always the car itself. Sometimes it's the moment a stranger proves they've already done the research, and the blizzard outside isn't just weather, it's pressure, forcing you to choose quickly, forcing you to accept familiarity from a person who has no right to it. Because when someone says your full name in the snow like they've been waiting, it doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like a plan. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard started the moment I got in and realized the driver wasn't going to speak at all, because silence in a moving car isn't neutral, it's a decision. It was close to midnight, snow blowing sideways so hard it made the streetlights look smeared, and the wind kept slamming powder against the windows like handfuls of sand. I'd left a crowded countdown bar early, because the storm warnings were getting louder than the music, and my phone battery was dropping fast in the cold. The app matched me with a driver named Troy, in a dark sedan. The plate matched the make and model matched, and the car pulled up with hazards blinking like a polite signal. I slid into the back seat, buckled up, and said hello out of habit. Troy didn't answer. He didn't nod. He didn't even glance at the mirror. He just pulled away smoothly, wipers scraping cabin quiet as a closed room. At the first red light, he stopped and turned his head, not the mirror, his head, and looked straight back at me. Not a quick check. A steady stare that held too long. I looked down at my phone because that's what you do when you don't want to start a fight you didn't plan for. The light turned green. He faced forward and drove like nothing happened. A minute later, the route on my screen said straight, and Troy turned off the main avenue onto a side street where the lights thinned and the snow looked deeper. The app redrew the route. I said calm but firm, "Hey, the GPS says straight." Troy didn't answer. The silence after my words felt heavier, like my voice had been swallowed by the storm. At the next stop sign, he stopped completely and stared back at me again. Same expression, same patience, like he was measuring how much I would tolerate. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen the silent driver, who locked eyes with me 1206A. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. I tried the in-app safety menu. The emergency call option spun, then failed. I tried calling 911 directly. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. Troy turned again deeper into an area I didn't recognize, and then the locks clicked. Quiet. Clean. My body reacted before my mind did. I grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. I forced my voice steady. Unlocked the doors. Troy didn't respond. At the next light, he glanced up at the rearview mirror for the first time and adjusted it downward until his eyes could catch mine without him turning around. He lifted one finger off the steering wheel and held it up between the seats like a teacher signaling wait. My stomach turned. Wait for what? Wait for who? An unknown number texted, "Silence is control." Another message followed. Get to light and people. My signal flickered between one bar and none. I tried calling my friend Jenna anyway, hoping voice would go through even if data wouldn't. It rang once, then died. The screen flashed no service, like the storm was a hand over my mouth. Troy kept driving slow and steady, and the streets kept getting emptier. Closed storefronts. Snowbanks, taller, then the curbs. Wind blowing trash across a sidewalk like the city was shedding anything human. He stopped at another sign and stared back again, this time without turning his head, just through the mirror, eyes locked and blinking like he wanted to prove he could hold my attention without a single word. I raised my phone to my ear as if I'd connected a call even though I hadn't, and I spoke loudly anyway, choosing performance over silence. "Yeah, I'm in the car now," I said. "We're on." I looked outside for a street sign. "On Cedar, near the closed shops." "Plate is." I read the plate number aloud even though no one was listening. Troy's jaw tightened. He didn't like me speaking into the air. He reached down and turned the radio on for a burst of static, then off again, like he was trying to swallow my voice with noise. Then he turned into a darker service lane, behind a row of buildings, the kind of back area where dumpsters sit and security cameras are pointed at. Loading doors, not people. Panic rose hot in my chest. "No," I said sharply. "Get back on the main road." Troy didn't answer. He drove behind a closed grocery store where the lights were off and the wind made the building groan. The car slowed, then stopped. The engine idled. The heater blew warm air, like a bribe. The back doors stayed locked. Troy stared at me through the mirror, calm and patient, like he could sit there all night while the weather did the work of keeping me inside. I started recording video openly, aiming it toward the dashboard and his profile. I narrated loud and clear. My rideshare driver has stopped in a service lane behind closed buildings. The doors are locked. The driver is not responding. Troy's hand tightened on the wheel. He didn't speak, but he did react. He put the car in drive and rolled forward again, not toward the street, but deeper along the back lane, where the snow drifted higher and the light got worse. I pounded the window with my palm in a steady rhythm and shouted, "Help! I'm locked in." The words sounded huge in the sealed cabin. Troy's eyes flashed with irritation. He swung the car around and finally headed back toward the street faster now. As we approached, an intersection headlights passed through the snow. Another car proved the world still existed, and I felt a surge of desperate hope. Troy turned into a mostly empty parking lot beside a closed strip mall and stopped under a dim light that flickered through blowing snow. He turned his head and stared at me again, longer than before, as if he wanted to see whether fear had made me quiet. I didn't give him quiet. I held my phone up, still recording, and said loud enough that anyone nearby might catch it. "If you don't unlock the doors, I'm going to keep screaming until someone stops." Something in his posture changed. He clicked the locks off. The sound was the sweetest click I'd ever heard. Before he could change his mind, I yanked the handle and shoved the door open. Cold wind punched me in the face. I nearly slipped, stepping out, but I ran anyway, straight toward the nearest open sign I could see. Through the storm, a 24-hour pharmacy glowing green. I didn't stop until I was inside bright light, with people staring. I told the cashier, breathless, "Call the police." My driver locked me in and wouldn't speak. Through the glass, I watched Troy's sedan idle for one long second, like he was deciding whether to come in after me. Then it drove off taillights, dissolving into white. Later, when an officer asked what exactly he did, I struggled to explain why it felt worse than yelling. Because yelling is sloppy. Silence is careful. Silence is watching you like you're a problem to solve. And in a blizzard, when the world outside is already muffled and empty, that kind of silence can make you feel like you've been removed from the normal rules of life, like you're already somewhere no one can reach. The officer asked if he threatened me. I said no, not with words. I said the threat was the choice to lock me in and refuse language, because it meant he could pretend nothing happened while I tried to prove I wasn't imagining it. By morning, the trip history showed a messy route that didn't match the streets I knew, and the driver profile was suddenly unavailable. I still remember that calm stare at every stoplight, and how the storm outside made it feel like the rest of the world had agreed not to interrupt. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the night I realized my driver had been recording my conversation and was playing pieces of it back like a threat, as if my own voice could be turned into a leash. It was a few days after New Year's snowstorm, still hammering the city, the kind of weather that makes every ride feel like a small gamble. I'd been at a friend's apartment helping clean up after a late dinner, and I didn't want to walk in that wind with my phone dying. The app matched me with a driver named Omar in a dark SUV. Everything looked normal. Plate matched, profile photo matched, route looked straightforward. I got into the back seat, buckled up, and immediately noticed a small dash cam mounted near the mirror, its tiny light blinking. Plenty of drivers have cameras. It's not automatically creepy. I told myself that, and kept the map open. Omar greeted me with a polite, almost sleepy, "Hey," and asked if I was warm enough. His tone was normal. The heater was on. The windshield was clear. For the first few minutes it felt like a routine winter ride. Then my friend Jenna called. I answered on speaker because my hands were cold and I didn't want to juggle the phone. Jenna was anxious. "Text me when you're home," she said. I laughed and said, "I will. I'm in the car." "It's fine." We talked the way friends talk, when they're half-tired complaining about the storm, joking about how the city shuts down every time it snows. Then Jenna asked about something personal, and without thinking I gave too much detail. I mentioned my building's side entrance being broken, the fact that the security door sometimes doesn't latch, and that I usually park on the second level when I drive. I even said the stupidest sentence you can say out loud in a stranger's car. It's easier to get in through the side when the front is iced over. Omar didn't react. He drove steady eyes on the road, radio low. But I noticed something small. The dashcam light changed from a soft blink to a steady glow, right as I said it, like it was saving a clip. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed, full screen, recorded audio of my conversation 1239A. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "Don't say your routine out loud." Another message followed. "He can hear everything." My throat went dry. Jenna said, "Are you okay? You got quiet." I forced a laugh. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." I ended the call early and stared at the dash cam. The little light kept glowing. Omar kept driving in silence for a while, turning exactly where the GPS said, and I started to calm down again because the human brain wants normal. Then about 10 minutes from my place, Omar reached forward and tapped something near the center console. The car speakers clicked, and then my own voice came through the speakers clear as if it was sitting in the front seat. "The side entrance is broken. The door doesn't latch sometimes." I froze so hard my breath caught. Omar didn't look back. He just kept driving calm, like this was a normal feature of the ride. The audio stopped. For a second, there was only wind and wipers. Then the speakers played Jenna's voice. "Text me when you're home." And, my voice again, "I'm in the car. It's fine." Blood rushed into my ears. "What are you doing?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded compared to the sound of myself amplified through his speakers. Omar sighed, like I was being dramatic. "Dashcam saves clips," he said, "for safety." Then, as if he wanted to prove how much he'd captured the speakers, clicked again, and played another line I'd forgotten. I said, "Second level near the stairs." It wasn't just recording, it was selecting. It was choosing the parts that made a person feel exposed. My phone buzzed. "He's showing you he has it." Another message, "Make him stop in light now." I tried the in-app safety menu. It spun and failed. Signal flickered, then died. I tried calling 911 anyway. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. Omar turned off the main road onto a quieter street, and that's when the locks clicked. Quiet, clean. I grabbed the handle. Locked. "I want you to stop at the gas station," I said, quickly pointing to a faint glow ahead through the snow. "I need to get out." Omar's voice stayed calm. "Why?" he asked. "It's cold." Then the speakers clicked again, and my own voice played back, clipped and sharp. "It's fine." The way it hit out of context made it sound like permission, like agreement, like the words could be used to erase my fear. Omar finally glanced up at the rearview mirror, eyes meeting mine for a second. He didn't smile. He just watched my reaction like he was studying a lab animal. Then he said almost conversationally, so the side door doesn't latch. That's annoying. The casualness made my stomach drop. He wasn't asking. He was confirming. He wanted me to correct him. He wanted me to talk. He wanted fresh audio. I didn't answer. I swallowed and forced my voice into something steady. "I'm recording too," I lied, holding my phone up like I was already live streaming. "My friend has your plate. If you don't stop at the lights, police will meet us." Omar's jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw uncertainty. He didn't like unknown variables. He liked weather because weather reduces variables. A live witness would increase them. He kept driving toward the glow, and I realized it wasn't a gas station. It was a 24-hour diner sign, neon, blurred by snow. People, cameras, light. Omar pulled into the lot and stopped near the entrance. The locks clicked off. "Go," he said, annoyed, as if stopping was my fault. I didn't hesitate. I shoved the door open and ran into warm light phone in my hand, heart slamming. Inside, I went straight to the counter and said, "Call the police." My driver recorded my phone call, played it back, and locked the doors. The waitress stared. A couple at a booth looked up. Through the glass, I watched Omar's SUV sit for a second, then reverse and speed out of the lot, disappearing into white. Later, when an officer took my statement, he asked what exactly I heard. I told him the lines that mattered, the ones that revealed I'd said something about my building, my routine, the broken door where I park. I showed him the timestamp on my video, where the speakers played my own words back. The officer nodded, but I could see the same problem I felt. Recording a call in a car is easy to explain away, as dashcam safety, but playing it back while the doors are locked is not safety. It's theater. It's intimidation. It's a way to make you feel like your life is already indexed and stored. I reported the ride, and the company sent the same generic message they always send, the one that talks about community guidelines like a prayer. They said they would review the account. They offered a credit, like fear has a price. I changed my routine after that. I stopped taking calls in rideshares. I stopped saying anything out loud that could become a map. I started using the front entrance even when it was inconvenient, because inconvenience is cheaper than being predictable. Because the worst part wasn't that Omar heard me. It was that he made me hear myself, proving that in the middle of a blizzard trapped in the back seat, my own words could be turned into evidence against me, even if I never meant them that way. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard didn't happen in the car. It happened at my front door, when the driver tried to follow me inside, like the ride wasn't over until he decided it was. It was late snow coming down so hard, it turned every streetlight into a blurry halo, and the wind shoved powder across the sidewalks in waves. I'd been at a friend's place longer than I planned, because the storm kept getting worse, and when I finally ordered a ride, I was exhausted, cold, and mostly focused on getting home in one piece. The app matched me with a driver named Curtis in a dark SUV. The rating was good, the plate matched, everything looked normal enough. Curtis was talkative, in that practiced way. Some drivers are asking where I was coming from, saying how crazy the night was, joking about people who can't drive in snow. I gave short answers and kept the map open. He drove fine. No weird detours, no sudden stops. And by the time we turned onto my street, I started to relax, which is exactly when you get punished for it. Curtis pulled up in front of my building and put the car in park. The snow was piled against the curb and the sidewalk looked like a half-buried path through white. "Here we are," he said, cheerful. "Don't slip." I thanked him, already unbuckling. Then he did something small that changed the temperature of the whole moment he got out of the car, immediately quick, like he'd been waiting to do it. He popped the trunk and said, "I'll help you with your stuff." I didn't have much, just a tote bag and a small duffel, and I didn't want him outside the vehicle close to me in the dark. "No, I'm good," I said, forcing a polite smile. Curtis waved it off. "It's snowing sideways," he said. "I'm not letting you struggle. It's dangerous. Dangerous." The word landed like bait, because it sounded caring. But he wasn't offering help the way people help. He was already reaching into the trunk like he'd decided. I stepped out, cold punching my face, and grabbed my tote before he could. He handed me my duffel anyway, standing too close, and I noticed his posture angled toward the building entrance, not toward his driver door, like he wanted to move with me. "Thanks," I said, stepping back. "Have a good night." Curtis smiled and nodded, then started walking beside me through the snow. "I'll make sure you get in," he said casual, as if it was normal for drivers to escort passengers into private buildings. My stomach tightened. "That's not necessary," I said. Curtis kept pace. "It's a blizzard," he replied. "People get jumped. I'm just being nice." The wind howled, and the street looked empty. That's what made it hard. The storm made his presence feel like a shield, even while my instincts screamed it was a threat. We reached the building's front vestibule, the little glass room before the locked lobby door. I fumbled for my key fob with numb fingers. Curtis stepped in with me without asking. The vestibule door closed behind us, sealing us into a small glass box with snow blasting outside. The air inside was warmer, quieter, too quiet. Curtis stood between me and the outer door now, and he was close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with cold air. My phone buzzed and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen. He tried to follow me into my apartment. 0126A. M. Location. The vestibule is a trap. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately, "Do not let him through the second door." Another message followed, "Get loud before you feel stuck." I forced myself to breathe slowly and swiped my fob at the inner lobby reader. The lock clicked. The lobby door opened. Curtis moved with me like it was automatic. I stepped through, then stopped abruptly and turned, blocking the doorway with my body. "Good night," I said firmer, holding the door halfway closed. Curtis smiled like he hadn't heard. "I'll just walk you to the elevator," he said. "No," I replied. Curtis's smile thinned. "Why?" he asked, as if I owed him an explanation. "Because I said no," I answered, and my voice shook slightly, not from fear but from anger, that he was forcing me into a negotiation. Curtis lowered his voice, like he was being reasonable. "Look," he said, "I've had passengers slip, crack their head, nobody knows. I'm just making sure you're safe." Safe. That word again, always spoken by the person making you unsafe. I kept the door in my hand. "I'm safe," I said. "Good night." Curtis's eyes flicked past me into the lobby, and I followed his gaze. The security desk was unstaffed at that hour. The hallway was empty. The elevator lights were dim. The storm outside made the building feel isolated too, like even indoors you could be alone. Curtis took a small step forward. "Come on," he said, "don't be like that." He tried to edge past my shoulder. My heart slammed. I didn't shove him, but I raised my voice suddenly loud enough to fill the lobby. "Stop. Do not come in." The sound of my own voice surprised me. Curtis froze, and in that freeze I saw the truth he'd been counting on me staying polite. The unknown number texted, "Good. Keep it public." Curtis's face tightened. "You don't have to yell," he hissed. I didn't lower my voice. "Leave," I said loud. "No?" Curtis looked toward the vestibule, as if calculating whether he could push past me. Then he changed tactics, going soft. "Okay," he said, hands up slightly. "Okay. Don't freak out." Freak out. Like my boundary was the problem. He backed into the vestibule, and I started to close the lobby door. Curtis stopped it with his foot. My stomach dropped. "Hey," he said, voice low. "At least let me know you got up safe. Just text me." He held up his phone, and on the screen I saw my address, typed out not just the building number, but the unit line too, like he'd copied it somewhere. My blood went cold. He smiled faintly. "It's a bad storm," he said. "I worry." I slammed the lobby door harder, forcing it against his shoe. "Move," I shouted, and I hit the building's front desk call button, the one that rings the overnight security service. The phone at the desk started ringing loud in the empty lobby, a sharp sound that made everything feel less private. Curtis pulled his foot back instantly, like the ring itself was a threat. I closed the door fully. The lock clicked. Curtis stood in the vestibule, staring at me through glass. his face flat now, all friendliness gone. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then he lifted his phone and tapped the screen, like he was doing something, and my phone buzzed in my hand, a message through the Rideshare app's masked number system. Just 2 words, calm and wrong. I'm waiting. My skin went cold. I didn't answer. I stepped away from the glass and moved deeper into the lobby where cameras were clearly visible. I called Jenna and put it on speaker. "Stay on," I said. "My driver is still here. He tried to come in." Jenna's voice sharpened instantly. "Call 911, she said. I did. The call rang. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. I almost laughed from the absurdity of it, like the storm itself was mocking me. I tried again. This time the call connected, and I gave the dispatcher the building address and the SUV description and the plate number from the trip receipt. While I spoke, I watched through the lobby glass. Curtis stood there, another long minute, staring at the door like he was deciding how far to push. Then he turned and walked back to his SUV, slow, not rushed, like he didn't feel guilty. He drove off into the snow. When police arrived, they took my statement and checked the security cameras. They said because he didn't force entry, it was hard to do much. Hard. That word felt like another lock. The rideshare company sent a generic email about safety and asked if I wanted a refund. A refund. I didn't want money. I wanted someone to understand that the ride doesn't end when the car stops if the person behind the wheel decides your private space is part of the route. For weeks after every time I entered that vestibule during winter, I felt my body tense, like it remembered the glass box, and the way the storm outside made it feel like there was nowhere to run without stepping back into the cold. Because the scariest part wasn't that he knew where I lived. The scariest part was how normal he tried to make it sound when he used that knowledge to get closer. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the cancel the ride scam that went wrong, because the second you cancel, the app stops watching, and some drivers know exactly how to turn that moment into a trap. It was a brutal night, snow blowing hard enough to sting bare skin, and I'd ordered a ride from a small restaurant because I didn't trust myself to walk even 10 minutes in that wind. My phone was at low battery, the cold draining it, and the streets were emptier than normal because everyone with sense was already home. The app matched me with a driver named Miles in a grey sedan. The plate matched. I got in the back, buckled up, and kept the map open. Miles drove for about 30 seconds, then said casually, "Hey, the app is glitching. Storm messes with it." I didn't answer at first, because people say that all the time. Then my phone buzzed with a message through the app from Miles: "Cancel the ride and pay cash." App keeps cutting out. My stomach tightened. "No," I said immediately. "Just keep it on the app." Miles laughed softly, like I'd misunderstood. "If you don't cancel, it'll charge you extra for the wait," he said. "Better for both of us. I'll give you a deal. Better for both of us. That phrase is always better for them." "No," I repeated. Miles sighed, exaggerated, like I was being difficult. He tapped his screen and said, "See, it's frozen." He held his phone up briefly, but I couldn't see details. Snow hammered the windows. The heater was on. The cabin felt like a warm bubble moving through white darkness, and I could feel the pressure of the storm outside pushing me toward compliance, because people get tired and just want the simplest option. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen. The cancel ride scam, gone wrong, 1052 p.m. Location, when the app stops watching. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately, "Do not cancel." Another message followed. "He wants you off platform. Keep the record." I looked at the route on my screen. It was still active. The car was moving. The app was not frozen. "It's not frozen," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I intended. Miles's shoulders tightened. "You don't have to accuse me," he muttered. "I'm trying to help you." Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He turned off the main road onto a darker side street, unplowed where the snow was deeper and the streetlights were fewer. "Why are you turning?" I asked. Miles didn't answer right away. He drove 2 blocks, then pulled into a small lot beside a closed storefront and stopped. The engine idled. The heater blew. Outside was white and empty. Then I heard a click. The door locks. I grabbed the handle. Locked. My throat went dry. "Unlock the doors," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Miles exhaled like I was dramatic. "Relax," he said. "I'm not doing anything. I just need you to cancel, so the app stops tracking. It's messing with my phone." "No," I said. "Drive me to a gas station, somewhere lit, or I'm calling the police." Miles laughed, once harsh. "In this storm," he said, "good luck." I tried the in-app safety button. It spun, then failed. Signal flickered between 1 bar and none. I tried calling 911 anyway. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. Miles glanced in the mirror like he'd heard something, then said low, "See, no signal." "So, cancel. Cash. Sampler. Sampler. That's what scammers say when they want you to stop thinking." My phone buzzed again. "Keep your voice loud." Another message. "Make him fear witnesses." I did the only thing I could. I called Jenna and put it on speaker. Praying voice would go through even if data didn't. It rang. Then, it connected. "Hello," Jenna sounded alert instantly, like she'd been trained by too many late-night calls from me. I made my voice loud and controlled. "Jenna, I'm in a rideshare," I said. The driver stopped in a lot and locked the doors. "He's demanding I cancel and pay cash." Miles's head snapped slightly, eyes flashing in the mirror. Jenna said, "Where are you?" I looked outside for any sign. Snow blurred everything. Then I saw a street sign, under a dim light. "Harrison. Harrison, near the closed shops," I said loudly. "Plate is..." I read the plate number from the trip receipt on my screen slow and clear. Miles muttered. "Are you serious?" Jenna said. "I'm calling 911. Miles's jaw tightened. "Tell her to hang up," he said, voice sharp. "Now. This is between us. Between us." Like isolation was a negotiation tool. "No," I said. "Unlock the doors and take me somewhere lit." Miles leaned forward and tapped his phone aggressively, like he was pretending to troubleshoot, then held it up so I could see a blank-looking screen. "App's dead," he said. "Cancel, and I'll take you. You'll take me where I asked." Miles didn't answer. He just stared forward, breathing slow. The lot felt like a box. The storm outside made it feel like the world had been erased. I realized what he wanted for me, to accept a new reality where there's no trip record, no customer support, no GPS trail, just me and him and whatever he decided next. I refused to be quiet. I started recording video, openly, aiming it at his face and the dashboard narrating loud enough for the audio to capture. "It's kummen and visi kymmentä kahdeksan pää." I said. "My rideshare driver has locked the doors and is demanding cash if I cancel the ride." Miles snapped. "Turn that off," and he reached down and clicked something. The cabin lights went off, making the car feel even more sealed. He tried to swallow my recording in darkness. I kept the phone screen bright anyway. Outside, a pair of headlights passed on the street, slow, cautious in snow. I slammed my palm against the window and yelled, "Help!" The word sounded huge. Miles swore and threw the car into drive, pulling out of the lot fast. The sudden movement made my stomach lurch. He turned back onto a road with more lights, not because he wanted to take me home, but because screaming creates risk. "Stop yelling," he hissed. "You're going to get me in trouble." "Then unlock the doors," I said. He didn't. He drove toward an ATM sign glowing through the snow and said, "We stop there. You get cash. Then I take you." That was the scam's real shape. Not a discount, a detour, a forced withdrawal. My blood went cold. Jenna's voice on speaker was tight. "I'm on with dispatch," she said. "Stay on the line." Miles heard it. His grip tightened. He took a hard right instead of pulling into the ATM, lot like he didn't want to be near cameras that would catch his plate at a bank. He drove toward a busier intersection where cars were stacked at a red light and the sight of other vehicles felt like oxygen. I leaned forward and shouted out the window, "Call the police." Miles glanced around, panicked now because witnesses were too close. He slammed his thumb on the lock button. Click. The doors unlocked. The light was still red. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the handle and shoved the door open into cold wind and blowing snow, nearly slipping as my foot hit slush. A horn blared behind us. Someone shouted. I ran toward the nearest storefront lights, heart-hammering phone still on speaker with Jenna and dispatch. Behind me, Miles peeled away through the intersection, taillights vanishing into white. Later, when police took my statement, they called it what it was, a fraud attempt that escalated into unlawful restraint when he locked the doors and tried to force a cash stop. The rideshare company sent the same generic email, the same polite language about community standards, but this time I had more than fear. I had the trip receipt, the plate, the recording, Jenna, as a witness dispatch logs. The scam went wrong for him because I didn't let the app stop watching. And the only reason I say that out loud is because winter storms make people desperate for simplicity, and scammers love storms for the same reason. Predators do. Bad weather shrinks your options until the wrong choice starts to feel like only choice. That night taught me a hard rule that I follow like a superstition. Now if a driver asks you to cancel, they're not helping you. They're trying to erase you. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the night my driver kept arguing with invisible passengers, because at first you think it's mental illness or stress, and then you realize he's using the ghosts as cover to do exactly what he wants, with you trapped in the back seat. It was close to 1 in the morning, snow still coming down, hard wind howling between buildings, like it was hunting for gaps. I'd left a friend's place early, my phone battery low, and I ordered a ride because walking in that storm felt like volunteering to disappear. The app matched me with a driver named Alan in a dark minivan. The plate matched. I got in the back, buckled up and kept my map open. Alan greeted me politely, asked if the heat was okay, and for the first few minutes he drove, normally. Then at the second stoplight, he suddenly turned his head and snapped, "Stop kicking my seat." I froze. I wasn't touching his seat. My feet were flat on the floor. I thought he was talking to me, and my stomach dropped. "I'm not," I started, and he cut me off with a sharp, "Not you." He stared at the empty front passenger seat and said quieter, but angry. I said stop. The passenger seat was empty. My skin prickled. I looked around the cabin like maybe someone was hidden under a blanket. Nothing. The van was clean and empty, except for a water bottle in the cup holder and a pair of gloves on the dash. The light turned green. Alan drove forward, breathing hard, and then he muttered, "Always the same with you," like he was continuing a conversation that started long before I got in. I told myself it could be Bluetooth. Maybe he was on a call, but there was no phone in his hand, no earpiece, and the radio was off. Then I heard another voice, not from a speaker, from inside the van, a low whisper right near the front passenger side, like someone speaking into the glove box. I couldn't make out words, only the presence of it, the shape of sound. Alan responded immediately. "No, not tonight." He sounded firm, like he was setting boundaries with someone who didn't respect them. My throat went dry. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full-screen arguments with invisible passengers 0104A. Location. The front seat isn't empty. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "Do not ask, who are you talking to?" Another message followed. "He wants you off balance." My hands shook. I kept my voice calm and small. "Everything okay?" I asked, and I hated how normal the question sounded in a situation that wasn't. Alan laughed softly. "Yeah," he said. "Just long night." He turned onto a darker road. Snow deeper. Here, fewer lights. And that's when the conversation got worse. He glanced at the empty passenger seat and said, Don't start." Then he slammed his palm on the steering wheel and snapped, You think this is funny. The van swerved slightly, then corrected. My heart hammered. I tried sharing my trip. Failed. One bar flickered, then none. I tried the in-app safety button. Spinning. Failed. The blizzard was swallowing every lifeline. Alan's head jerked to the side, as if he was listening to someone near his ear. Then he said quieter, almost pleading, "Not her. Leave her alone." The word "her" made my stomach drop, because it placed me inside the conversation. He wasn't just having a breakdown. He was acknowledging me as a target in whatever he was performing. The whisper came again, soft and close, and Alan's face tightened. He muttered, "No, I won't." Then he did something that made my blood go cold. He reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet, clean. The doors locked. I grabbed the handle. Locked. "Hey," I said, voice firmer. "Now, unlock the doors." Alan didn't answer me. He stared at the passenger seat and said, almost angrily, "See what you did," like the invisible person had forced him to lock me in. That's when I understood the function of the ghosts. If I panicked, he could blame it on them. If he took a wrong turn, he could blame it on them. If he stopped somewhere isolated, he could blame it on them. It was a narrative that made him seem less responsible. The unknown number texted, "He's building plausible deniability." Another message, "Force him into reality with witnesses." I tried calling Jenna. Ring. No service. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. Alan's mouth twitched like he heard something too. He smiled faintly and said to the empty seat, "See, nobody's coming." That sentence felt like a trap closing. The van turned into a parking lot beside a closed building, lights off snow drifting against a loading dock. Alan stopped. The engine idled. The heater blew warm air like a bribe. He stared forward, then to the passenger seat, then back forward like he was waiting for instructions. I started recording video, openly, aiming it at the dashboard and his profile. I spoke loud enough for the recording to capture. My driver has stopped at a closed building. The doors are locked. He has been talking to someone who isn't here. Alan's head snapped toward me, eyes flashing. "Don't," he said sharply. Finally, a direct command. That was proof. He was aware. He wasn't lost in delusion. He knew what I was doing, and he didn't like it. I kept recording. Alan turned to the empty seat and said in a calm voice that sounded practiced, "Not now." Then he looked at me in the mirror and said softer, "You shouldn't have heard that." My blood went cold. "Unlock the doors," I said loud. "No." Alan hesitated, then the whisper came again, faint close, and Alan's face tightened like he was irritated by a coworker. He muttered fine, and threw the van into drive. He drove out of the lot fast, back toward brighter streets. "We're almost there," he said, suddenly too cheerful, like he was resetting the scene. The tone shift was another clue. This was performance. We reached a busier intersection with other cars, visible at a red light, and I saw my chance. I started pounding the window with my palm and yelling, "Help, call the police." Alan swore and slammed his thumb on the lock button. Click. The doors unlocked. The light was still red. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the handle and stepped out into wind, and snow nearly slipping on slush. A horn blared. Someone shouted, "Hey." Alan peeled away through the intersection. The second the light turned green, van, disappearing into white. I ran toward the nearest open storefront lights, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. Later, when police took my statement, I tried to explain the voice, the whispers, the way he spoke to an empty seat like it was occupied. The officer nodded, but his eyes said, "What my brain already feared, it's hard to prove a performance. It's hard to prove a tactic that relies on confusion." The rideshare company sent the usual email about safety and guidelines. The driver's profile disappeared. But the part I still can't shake is that sentence. "See, nobody's coming." Because it told me the invisible passengers were never the real point. The point was to make you feel alone enough that you stop expecting help. And when a blizzard is already doing that work for free, some people will gladly use it as their script. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the one with a car filled with a sweet chemical smell that made my throat tighten, and the driver acted like it was nothing, like he wanted me to question my own senses before I questioned him. It was after midnight snow, blowing hard enough to blur the outlines of parked cars into lumps, and the streets were almost empty, except for the occasional set of cautious headlights. I'd ordered a ride from a friend's apartment because my bus stop was buried, and I didn't trust myself to walk home in that wind with my phone dying. The app matched me with a driver named Victor in a dark sedan. Plate matched. Make and model matched. I got in the back seat and immediately noticed the cabin was too clean, like it had been scrubbed recently. No clutter, no crumbs, nothing. The air smelled faintly like new plastic, and something floral like a cheap air freshener trying too hard. Victor greeted me politely, asked if I wanted the heat higher, and for the first few minutes he drove normally steady hands, eyes forward. I tried to relax. Then about 5 minutes into the ride, the smell changed. It wasn't smoke. It wasn't gas. It was sweet, sharp chemical like nail polish remover, mixed with cough syrup like something you're not supposed to breathe. My throat tightened instantly, a reflex. I swallowed and felt a sting. My eyes watered. I leaned forward and said, "Do you smell?" That Victor didn't answer right away. He stared forward and said flat, "What smell?" The denial was immediate, and it made my stomach drop. "It's chemical," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Can you crack a window?" Victor sighed, like I was being dramatic. "It's a blizzard," he said. "You want to freeze." The way he phrased it made the storm sound like a leash. "Just a little," I said. "Please." Victor shook his head. "No," he replied. My pulse jumped. The smell got stronger, and with it came a subtle dizziness, like the edges of my thoughts were softening. That could have been panic. It could have been the fumes. It could have been both. My phone buzzed and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen, the Smell of Chloroform 0133A. Location your throat knows before your brain. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number. Texted immediately. Trust your body. Another message followed open. A window yourself if you can. I reached for the rear window control on my door and pressed down. Nothing. I pressed again. Nothing. The window didn't move. Child lock setting for windows. Victor had disabled passenger window controls. My stomach dropped. I leaned forward and said louder now, "Turn the window on." Victor's jaw flexed. "Relax," he said. "It's just the air freshener. People complain." The smell was not air freshener. It made my tongue taste metallic. My eyes kept watering. I pressed my sleeve to my nose and tried to breathe through fabric. Victor glanced up at the rearview mirror, eyes meeting mine, and for a second, there was something like satisfaction there, like he was watching how I reacted to the smell. Then he reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet, clean. The doors lock. Panic hit, hot and sharp. "Unlock the doors," I said, voice shaking now. Victor didn't answer. He turned off the main road onto a quieter side street where lights were fewer and snowbanks were higher. "No," I said. "Stay on the main road." Victor's voice stayed calm. "Shortcut," he said, like the word was a spell that made people stop resisting. The smell got stronger again, and my head felt light, like I'd stood up too fast. My phone signal flickered between one bar and none. I tried the in-app safety button. Spinning. Failed. I tried calling 911. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. My hands shook. The unknown number texted, "Do not fall asleep." Another message. "Pain is your friend right now." I needed to stay sharp. I needed oxygen. I needed to make my body refuse the soft drift of dizziness. I pinched the inside of my thigh, hard enough to hurt, then harder using pain to anchor myself. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. The sharpness helped. I started recording video with my phone, aiming it at the dashboard and Victor's profile. I spoke loud and clear, forcing my voice to stay steady. "There is a strong chemical smell in this car. My driver refuses to open windows. The doors are locked. I'm recording. Victor's head snapped slightly. Stop, he said, voice sharp. Now, turn it off. He didn't sound concerned for my comfort. He sounded concerned for himself. That told me everything. I kept recording. I coughed, deliberately loud and ugly hacking, like I couldn't breathe. Victor swore. What are you doing? He snapped. I can't breathe, I said loud. Stop at a gas station. Now. Victor didn't. He drove faster. That's when I did the most desperate thing. I triggered the car alarm from the inside by slamming my elbow against the door frame and repeatedly yanking the handle even though it was locked. Some cars chirp when you tug. Some don't. This one didn't. So I got louder. I slammed my palm against the window and screamed, "Help, call 911." The sound ripped out of me, and it was messy, but messy is better than quiet when you're trapped. Victor swore and said low, "Shut up." His voice was angry now, and anger is a sign he's losing control. He turned hard toward brighter streets, and through the snow I saw it, the glow of a 24-hour diner sign read neon, blurred by storm. Cameras. People. Light. Victor pulled into the lot abruptly and stopped near the entrance. The locks clicked off. "Get out," he snapped, like he wanted the problem to leave the car. I didn't hesitate. I threw the door open and cold air punched my face, but it tasted like life compared to the chemical sweetness. I stumbled out, lungs burning, and ran inside the diner. Warm air hit me. Coffee smell. Food. Normal. I went straight to the counter and said breathless, "Call the police." My driver locked me in and there was a chemical smell. He wouldn't open windows. The waitress's eyes widened. A man in a booth stood up immediately, phone already in his hand. Through the glass, I watched Victor sit for 1 second, then reverse and speed out of the lot tires, spraying slush, disappearing into white. Later, when police took my statement, they asked if I was sure about the smell. That question made me angry because the whole point of the tactic is to make you doubt the thing your body knows. I said I know what my throat felt like. I know my eyes were watering. I know he disabled the windows and locked the doors and turned off route. The officer nodded and wrote it down. The rideshare company sent a generic email about safety. They asked for my feedback. They offered a credit. I didn't want a credit. I wanted the world to admit that sometimes danger doesn't look like a weapon. It looks like a smell and a locked window and a driver who tells you it's nothing while your body tells you it's everything. Since then, I don't get in a car without checking whether the windows respond. I keep my phone charged in winter like it's part of my coat. And if I smell something that makes my throat tighten, I don't debate it. I don't wait for proof. I don't let the storm outside convince me I should stay quiet inside. Because the blizzard is already trying to erase you. You can't help it by doubting yourself. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the night I realized my Lyft driver was a wanted fugitive, and the only thing keeping me alive was my ability to pretend I didn't know while the storm tried to erase every chance for help. It was after midnight, snow coming down in thick, aggressive sheets, the kind that makes street signs unreadable until you're already past them. I'd stayed late at a friend's place because the storm warnings kept escalating. And when I finally ordered a ride, I was mostly focused on warmth and getting home before the roads became impossible. The app matched me with a driver named Ray, in a silver sedan with a clean interior and a high rating. Everything looked normal enough. Plate matched. Car matched. I got in the back seat, buckled up, and kept the map open like I always do. Ray greeted me politely, asked if the heat was okay, and drove smoothly at first. The heater blew warm air. The wipers kept a narrow tunnel of visibility, and the storm outside felt like the only enemy. Then Ray took a turn that didn't match the route. The app redrew. He said casual, main roads blocked. I know a better way. Shortcut. The word again. My stomach tightened, but I told myself it was plausible. Snow closures happen. Detours happen. What scared me was how calm he sounded, like the weather gave him permission to do anything. We drove through quieter streets, where lights were fewer and the snowbanks were higher, and my phone signal flickered between one bar and none. I tried to share the trip with Jenna. Failed. I tried again. Failed. Ray didn't talk much after that. He drove, with both hands on the wheel, posture rigid, jaw tight like he was holding something back. Every few minutes he checked the rearview mirror, not quick glances, long looks, like he was verifying I was still there. I told myself he was just cautious in the storm. But then I noticed the small details that didn't match normal driver. The phone mount on his dash held two phones, not one. One was clearly running the ride. The other was face down, but every now and then it vibrated, and Ray's eyes flicked toward it like it mattered more than the road. A scanner app, maybe. Another account. Another life. We approached a stretch of road where snow drifted deep, and the city fell away into darker block. Ray slowed near a gas station glowing through the storm, bright fluorescent light like a beacon, and my body relaxed, slightly, because light means cameras, witnesses, normal rules. Ray didn't turn in. He passed it. I leaned forward. "Could you stop there?" I asked. "I need water." Ray didn't answer immediately. Then he said flat, "No stops. Roads are bad." He said it like he was denying a child. Candy, not like I was paying him. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen. My LYFT driver was a wanted fugitive 0119A. Location, you'll know before he does. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. "You need proof, not feelings." Another message followed. "Get his face under light." My throat went dry. I watched Ray's profile in the dim dashboard glow. He wore a beanie pulled low and a zipped jacket like he didn't want skin visible. That can be normal in winter, but something about it felt like concealment instead of comfort. Then traffic forced us to slow near an intersection with a convenience store on the corner, its window plastered with flyers and posters. The red light held us there, and for a split second, the sedan idled under bright streetlight. I looked out the window and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like my body forgot to breathe. On the store's window was a fresh poster, large and white with a face on it. It wasn't a grainy old missing person flyer. It looked official, like something police had printed quickly and distributed. The face on the poster had the same hard jaw and the same eyes as Ray, just without the beanie. The headline was big enough to read from the car, "Wanted." Under its smaller text, "Armed and dangerous. Call 911." The name under the photo wasn't Ray, but the face was his. My hands went cold. My mouth went dry. The storm outside suddenly felt irrelevant, because the real danger was inside the warm car with me. Ray didn't notice the poster yet. He was staring forward, fingers tight on the wheel. I forced my expression into neutral and looked down at my phone like nothing happened. Inside my head, everything was screaming. If he sees me react, he'll know I know. If he knows I know, he'll have no reason to let me out anywhere that has cameras. The unknown number texted, "Do not stare at the poster again." Another message. ACT. Tired. ACT. Boring. I did exactly that. I slumped slightly in the seat, lowered my eyelids, and tried to make my body look small and unimportant. I opened a text to Jenna and typed quickly without looking obvious. "If I don't answer, call police. I think driver is wanted." I saw a poster, plate and receipt. I hit send repeatedly until one bar flickered long enough for the message to go through. Then I turned my brightness down and tucked the phone against my thigh. The light turned green. Ray drove forward, and I kept my breathing slow. My heartbeat was so loud I felt like it was visible. A minute later, Ray turned his head slightly toward the convenience store in the mirror, and his eyes widened just a fraction. He had seen the poster. I could tell because his whole posture changed, shoulders tightening, breathing, shifting like an animal that suddenly smells a trap. He accelerated too fast for snow, then corrected, trying to look normal. But normal was gone. He took the next turn hard, cutting into a darker street where the lights were fewer. "Why are you turning?" I asked, forcing my voice into mild annoyance, not fear. Ray didn't answer. He reached down and clicked the locks. Quiet. Clean. The doors locked. My stomach dropped. The trap snapped shut. "Hey," I said, still trying to keep my tone controlled. You don't need to lock the doors. Ray's voice came out low and sharp. It's safer, he said. Safesh. That word again, always spoken by the person taking options away. The storm outside made the street empty. The empty street made the locked doors feel final. I tried the in-app safety button. It spun and failed. No signal. I tried calling 911 anyway. Ring. Quiet. Breath. Happy New Year, a man whispered. The call dropped. My skin went cold. Ray glanced at me in the mirror and his eyes were no longer polite. They were calculating. He wasn't just running from police. He was deciding what to do with the witness in his back seat. I did the only thing I could. I made myself less threatening by acting cooperative. It's okay, I said softly. Just take me to the address. Ray didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed a fraction, like he preferred me quiet. We drove for several minutes through streets that looped toward the edge of town. Then I saw a new kind of light ahead. Not neon, not gas station glow, but the bright whitewash of headlights angled across snow. A police cruiser parked near a road closure, lights not flashing, just sitting there, while officers redirected cars around a drift. It wasn't a traffic stop. It was storm control. But to Ray, it was a war. He slowed abruptly, then took a sudden right into a side lane as if he hadn't seen them, trying to avoid even passing close. That move alone would have made him look guilty if anyone was watching. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. This is your exit window. Another message. Make him stop without fighting him. I needed him to stop where police could see. I couldn't force the doors. I couldn't rely on signal. So I used the simplest, oldest trick. I made the situation messy in a way criminals hate. I started coughing hard, loud, ugly, coughing like I was about to vomit. I leaned forward slightly and gagged for real, forcing saliva up because fear makes that easy. I'm going to throw up, I said breathless. Ray swore. Not in my car, he snapped. He slowed, irritated, and for a second his attention shifted from escape to damage control. I kept coughing louder, making it sound uncontrollable. Pull over, I said. I can't. Ray slammed the brakes and pulled into the nearest open space near the road closure, half on the shoulder, half in a shoveled gap. He didn't want vomit. He didn't want evidence. He reached down and unlocked the doors with an angry click. Get out, he hissed. Do it outside. The moment the locks clicked, I yanked the handle and stumbled out into the snow, coughing dramatically, bending over like I was sick. Cold air hit my face like a slap, but the freedom felt like oxygen. I didn't run at first. I walked fast toward the nearest officer, like a drunk person trying not to slip, because running can trigger a chase response. When I got close enough, I straightened and said loud and clear, "That driver is on a wanted poster." He locked me in. "Please help." The officer's expression changed instantly. Ray saw it. He slammed the car into gear and tried to pull away, but the road closure in the snow made it awkward. Another officer stepped into the lane, hand up. Ray's sedan fishtailed slightly. For a second I thought he'd plow through. Then he stopped, trapped by weather and law, in the same place. Later, safe and shaking in the warmth of a patrol car, an officer asked me how I knew. I told him about the poster, the face, the locks. They confirmed the name and told me the man had been wanted for skipping court after a violent charge. I sat there, staring at my hands, realizing how close I'd been to becoming a footnote in someone else's winter story. The storm outside kept falling indifferent. And what I learned that night is that blizzards don't just hide footprints. They hide patterns. They hide people. And sometimes the car that finally arrives when everyone else stays home is the last place you should ever get into alone. The most terrifying rideshare experience I had during the blizzard was the ride that never ended, because at some point I realized the driver didn't need to kidnap me to control me. He just needed to keep me moving long enough that my brain stopped believing home was an outcome. And the storm outside made that psychological cage feel natural. It was New Year's week, late at night. Snow coming down so hard it turned the city into a blurred photograph. I'd left a small gathering early, my phone battery low, my patience lower, and I requested a ride with the simple goal of warmth and a bed. The app matched me with a driver named Evan in a black SUV. Plate matched. Make and model matched. I got in the back, buckled up, and watched the map like I always do. Evan greeted me politely and drove smoothly at first. The heater blew warm air. The windshield stayed clear. The roads were quiet. For the first 10 minutes, everything felt normal enough that my body started to unclench. Then the first weird thing happened. The app's ETA stopped decreasing. It hovered, fluctuating between 12 minutes and 15 minutes, even as we continued moving. I told myself it was storm recalculation. Then I saw the route line on the map redraw and redraw again, as if my destination was sliding away from us. I leaned forward and said casually, "Is the route changing on your end?" Evan replied, without looking back. "Storm messes with GPS. I'm taking you the right way." The right way. Shortcut. Those words always come right before options disappear. A few minutes later, we passed the same lit billboard I remembered from earlier in the ride. The same blue ad with a smiling face that looked too happy for that night. My stomach tightened. "We passed that already," I said, voice sharper. Evan didn't answer. He turned the radio down until it was barely a whisper, like he didn't want the car to feel lived in. Then the locks clicked. Quiet. Clean. My body reacted instantly. I grabbed the handle. Locked. "Why are the doors locked?" I asked. Evan's tone stayed calm. "Safety," he said. "You don't want someone opening your door at a light." That excuse might have worked in a crowded city. It didn't work on empty snow roads at 1 in the morning. My phone buzzed, and a calendar event I hadn't created flashed full screen the ride that never ended. 0108 AM. Location, you're still on the way. The only button was accept. I swiped it away. It returned. An unknown number texted immediately. Watch the app. Another message followed. He may cancel mid-ride. If the app stops tracking, you're in his world. My throat went dry. I tried sharing my trip with Jenna. Failed. One bar flickered, then none. I tried the in-app safety button. Spinning. Failed. I tried calling 911 anyway. Ring. Quiet. Breath. "Happy New Year," a man whispered. The call dropped. Evan didn't react. He drove like the call hadn't happened, like the world outside the windshield didn't include consequences. We turned onto a darker road, where the snow was deeper and the streetlights were fewer. "Where are we?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. Evan said, "Back way like that." Answered everything. Then I noticed something that made the bottom fall out of my stomach. The app screen flickered and suddenly my trip looked different. The route line vanished for a moment, then reappeared, but the pickup point had changed slightly, as if I'd been picked up somewhere else. Like the record was rewriting itself. I stared harder. My destination address was still correct, but the app kept refreshing, like it couldn't decide what was true. Evan's right hand drifted toward a second phone mounted lower on the dash, and he tapped it twice without looking. The trip on my phone refreshed again. My blood went cold. He wasn't just driving, he was managing the record. I remembered stories about fake GPS apps, about drivers running multiple accounts, about cancelling rides mid-route to eliminate tracking. The unknown number texted, "He's editing your reality." Another message, "Create an external anchor. Someone else must know where you are." I forced my phone to brightness max and opened my notes app because notes don't need signal. I started typing a timeline like a desperate accountant. 1:12 a.m. doors locked. Passed blue billboard twice. Turned onto unlit road. Driver has 2 phones. I typed the license plate again from the receipt, and then I started recording video, openly aiming it toward the dashboard and his profile. I narrated loud and clear. "It's yksi, 13 AM. I'm in a rideshare. The driver has locked the doors. We keep passing the same landmarks. I'm recording." Evan's shoulders tightened. He didn't look back, but his tone changed, less polite, more controlled. "Turn that off," he said. "You're making me nervous. Unlock the doors." I replied. Evan laughed softly, not friendly. In this storm, he said, you'll freeze. There it was, the weather as the cage, the excuse that makes coercion sound like care. He kept driving, and my mind started doing something terrifying. It started to get tired. Not sleepy. Tired in the way you get when a situation has no obvious solution. The longer we drove, the more my brain tried to normalize the loop. My stomach hurt with adrenaline. My hands shook. The map kept redrawing. The ETA kept hovering. Evan occasionally took a turn that made no sense, then another and another, as if he was circling the city's outer edges without committing to a destination. After a while, I stopped asking where we were, because asking was giving him something: attention, energy, engagement. And I realized his strategy might be as simple as that. Keep you talking until you're exhausted, keep you moving until you stop. Expecting arrival, keep you warm enough to stay in the car, and cold enough outside to fear leaving it. Then the worst moment came. My app suddenly displayed a message I'd never seen mid-ride: trip cancelled. For a second the screen went blank, except for an option to request a new ride. My blood went cold. You cancelled the trip, I said, and my voice cracked because now the app wasn't watching anymore. Evan didn't answer. He just kept driving. The SUV moved through snow like a silent machine. I tried to request help inside the app, but it treated me like a new customer, not like a person currently trapped in a vehicle. My phone signal was still flickering near nothing. The unknown number texted, "Now it's just you and him." Another message: "Get to cameras. Force a stop where he can't deny you exist." I needed an external anchor, something physical, something that couldn't be redrawn by a phone. I scanned the road ahead through blowing snow and saw an exit sign leading toward a toll area on the highway, the kind with booths and cameras. My heart jumped. "Pull off here," I said, loud pointing. "I'm going to be sick." Evan's jaw flexed. "No," he said. "We're almost there. Almost there." The lie people use when they want you to stop resisting. I made the lie expensive. I started coughing hard, then gagging, then I shoved my fingers toward my mouth like I was about to vomit. It was disgusting, and I didn't care. Evan swore. He didn't want vomit in the car. He didn't want biological evidence. He didn't want the mess that forces a stop. He took the exit toward the toll booths. As we approached, the booths appeared like bright boxes in the storm, each one lit, each one with cameras and a human inside. Evan slowed. I could see his shoulders tense because this was not a place predators like. It's a place records happen automatically. Evan tried to choose the far booth, the one that looked empty, but a worker stepped into view anyway, bundled in a jacket, moving like a real person in a real system. Evan rolled forward. I leaned toward the window and screamed help. "I'm locked in." The words came out raw. Evan's hand slammed the lock button in panic. Click, unlock. The toll worker's head snapped up. Evan hissed. "Shut up," but it was too late. I threw my door open into freezing wind and stumbled out onto the snow-packed lane, nearly slipping, but adrenaline held me upright. I ran toward the booth and shouted, "Call the police." He cancelled the ride and locked the doors. Evan tried to accelerate, but the booth gate arm was down, and another car was behind him. He was trapped in a literal line, forced into the slow reality he'd been trying to keep me from reaching. The toll worker grabbed a phone. Evan's SUV lurched, then stopped, boxed in by the storm and by infrastructure. Later, when police arrived, Evan insisted there was a misunderstanding, that I was intoxicated, that the app cancelled because of signal that the doors locked automatically. He said everything that makes a story blurry, but the cameras didn't care about his words. The toll booth cameras showed me shouting. They showed the door locked and then unlocking. They showed the cancelled trip screen on my phone, because I had kept recording as long as possible. They showed that I existed in a place he couldn't redraw. When I finally got home, hours later, the storm still falling, I sat in my apartment staring at my coat on the floor, and I realized the ride didn't never end because of distance. It never ended, because Evan was trying to turn time into a weapon, trying to stretch one trip into a fog where rules don't apply, where you stop expecting rescue because you stop expecting arrival. And in a blizzard, when the whole world already feels slowed and muffled and emptied, That strategy is terrifyingly easy to hide behind. That's why I tell people now, like it's a rule carved into me. If a rideshare trip ever gets cancelled while you're still inside the car, treat it like the moment the seatbelt stops being safety and starts being restraint, and get yourself to cameras, to people, to any external proof that you're still in the world.